Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1233 of the War News stream. And we have massive news today that a Russian drone has struck Lithuania in NATO airspace, striking their territory. Also, U.S. officials are accelerating Ukraine military aid immediately. And also, there's been explosions and assassinations in Tehran, Iran today. We got very big news from around the world, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear that a significant amount of U.S. air assets are once again taking off and making their way back into the Middle East. As several dozen U.S. KC-135 Stratotankers have been seen taking off from their air bases today and making their way into the Eastern Pacific at this moment, and are most likely inbound to Guam and Australia to be able to land and refuel and then continue their final leg into the Middle East, according to information that we've been able to get over the course of the day. We have also been able to hear that the United States of America is now back in support of Ukraine in full, as we have been able to hear that the president is soon to approve a $300 million presidential drawdown to be able to provide more support and supplies to Ukraine. And as of today, the United States Armed Forces is now beginning its full stream of supplies and equipment to the state of Ukraine to be able to help them to keep fighting the Russians in the current conflict. Outside of that information, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has ended up landing or attacking, for the large part, Lithuania with an errant training drone, with the training drone veering off course more than a kilometer into Lithuanian territory and then crashing into the surface of the country. We have been able to hear that it was a training drone that was not armed with an explosive, but the situation was severe enough that a large amount of Lithuanian ministers and top officials did make their way to secure facilities and locations in the midst of this largely false alarm attack. We have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has come under a direct attack itself today, as Ukrainian armed forces have been able to launch launch a significant drone attack, with a large amount of the drones reaching Moscow itself and directly threatening the air defense perimeter. Outside of that information, we've also been able to hear that the city of Kursk has also been under attack today, while outside of that information, the People's Republic of China, through an official statement, for the first time we have actually been able to see Xi Jinping. He has finally come out of hiding after his 2 weeks, pretty much hiding somewhere inside of China. His first statement today was that nothing will stop the reunification of the democratic Taiwanese with the communist Chinese. And we've also been able to see that the People's Liberation Army and the Eastern Theater Command have conducted a significant amphibious military exercise inside of the Fujian province of the Eastern Theater Command. Outside of that, we've also been able to see in the Middle East that a top Iranian official, I believe he is the chief of the armed staff or the armed forces, was killed today in a drone strike that ended up hitting his apartment inside of western Tehran. We have also been able to hear that multiple intelligence reports, including French and Israeli reports, are now stating that while the airstrikes were able to destroy a significant amount of enriched uranium, there is still a sizable amount that is still intact and within the Iranian government's hands at this moment. We have also been able to hear that the Iranian attack on the Al-Udeid airbase within Qatar did result in the loss of a U.S. radar in the facility, and one that is crucially important to U.S. force protection and security inside the Persian Gulf. We have also been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis took 6 of the sailors on board the Eternity Sea hostage the other day, and we are also hearing that search and rescue efforts for the other missing sailors is still underway at this moment by search and rescue effort teams within the area. The Israelis have also vowed vengeance against the Houthis, and we are also hearing that the Ukrainian forces have been able to hold their front lines today and still inflict large casualties on the Russian Federation's armed forces. And we have an insanely large amount of news even beyond that, but as you all can see, the news is incredibly large these days, and as a matter of fact, I'd say that this is some of the largest news that we have seen, at least in volume of news, over about the past few weeks or so. And so we will be making sure to get you all into each and every little detail and piece of information that we have at this moment coming from the entirety of the world. And starting us off inside the United States today, we have been able to hear that a large amount of stratotankers are taking off and making their way into the Pacific. We've been able to hear that dozens of stratotankers, which we were able to see a couple of them and their call signs here, have taken off from their air bases throughout the United States and are breaking out into the Eastern Pacific and making their way towards the area of Guam or Australia. We are largely believing that the significant movement of stratotanker aircraft is once again inbound to the Middle East, as we are hearing that the United States of America is considering a second wave of strikes to be likely against the Islamic Republic of Iran, considering the evolving intelligence picture, which is starting to show that the Islamic Republic of Iran was able to retain a large amount of its enriched uranium and is continuing to work on rebuilding its nuclear weapons program and getting a usable nuclear weapon within the next 2 years. We are understanding that at this moment, the United States of America is largely operating on that understanding, and as a result of that, they are now sending a large amount of stratotankers once again into the region to support future U.S. air operations. As many of you all know, there was a significant amount of U.S. aircraft and U.S. Air Forces that were moved into the area during the last wave of attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran, if things were to get pretty hairy, dicey, or shaky. And we do understand that at the moment, with the movement of this large fleet of stratotankers, quite literally in the dozens, into the Pacific, it is becoming incredibly clear that they are most likely making their way back into CENTCOM's area of responsibility to be based at Saudi air bases, among many others, and to prepare for any kind of U.S. air operations and actions that will be taken against the Iranians here in the very near future. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear in prior information that we are now starting to get uncovered here recently today, that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the one missile that made it through the air defense actually made it through and hit something that wasn't just a non-essential part of the Al-Udeid air base. It was actually one of the most important parts of the Al-Udeid air base inside of Qatar, which was the radome. We were able to see, according to satellite picture and evidence, that the radome facility, pictured here, was visibly hit and destroyed as a result of the Iranian strike. From what we are largely understanding, this satellite imagery is showing a destroyed radome. This radome was incredibly important for radar detection and largely air interceptions that occurred anywhere around the area of the Persian Gulf, and its loss may be a significant blow to America's abilities to see incoming threats within the region, within the skies around Qatar, and to be able to intercept them or destroy them properly. This is actually showing us that, unlike prior statements made by the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense, also stating that any other sorts of information to the contrary were flat out lies, the hit hit at this airbase actually was somewhat damaging. It did not hit in the middle of a grassy field, like they were saying, which also would be a little bit weird considering that Qatar is in the middle of a freaking desert. There's not really a lot of grassy fields in the middle of a desert. But beyond that, it is showing us that there was a decent amount of damage caused. And not only that, some of the supporting structures also appear to have taken some moderate fire damage as well as a result of the explosion by the Iranian missile that impacted the radome directly and destroyed the radome along with the radar inside of it. This is also showing us that the Islamic Republic of Iran was able to land one decent hit against the United States. We actually did not go without taking some form of a hit. They actually ended up hitting and destroying one of our more important radars, at least within the area. So we will be having to wait and see what the U.S. response will be to this hitting the public. They already knew about this for weeks at this point. But now that it's starting to hit the public due to the satellite information that's being unveiled about the airbase, we'll have to wait and see what the U.S. Department of Defense and the Office of the President's response is. Because once again, like we were saying on this channel a while ago, U.S. forces came under attack. They were directly hit. Vital, expensive equipment in the terms of tens of millions of dollars in the form of this radar was hit and destroyed in the process of that attack. And it's also possible that there may have been some service members that possibly were wounded in the attack that we have not been able to hear about. With that in mind, it's very clear once again that the Islamic Republic of Iran attacked this airbase, not with the idea of just doing a little token attack. It was an attack that actually was aiming to hit and destroy key areas of the facility and most likely wound and kill key personnel within the Al-Udeid airbase as well. Now that we're seeing that this information is now surfacing for the public to be able to witness and see as far as the satellite photography was concerned. Outside of that, the threat of the Yemeni Houthis closing off all traffic within the southern Red Sea is still present, as we've been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis apparently took 6 Filipino crew members of the Eternity Sea cargo vessel captive and are now holding them as hostages inside of the Yemeni Houthi-controlled territory of western Yemen. We are also hearing that search and rescue efforts are still underway by forces within the area, and we are hearing that apparently Greek operators of the vessel said that so far 10 people have been rescued and 10 remain unaccounted for, including one guard from one of the vessels. This is once again showing us that there are sailors that are currently in peril at sea within the southern Red Sea at the moment and have not been found by search and rescue teams, and others have been picked up from the water by the Houthis and have been taken back to shore and will most likely be living in inhospitable conditions as hostage and attempted to be used as leverage against Western forces, the United States, the State of Israel, as well as the Europeans at large. This is once again showing us that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still conducting their concerted efforts of terrorism and piracy within the region, and not only that, they actually were able to land a damaging hit to the U.S. forces inside the Al-Udeid airbase in Qatar. Outside of that information, it does appear that someone somewhere is starting to strike back against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Before I get into that information here in a second, which is more so on the covert level, at least from what we're hearing right now, we were able to hear that intelligence reports are now coming out that apparently the uranium that was said to have been completely destroyed in Operation Midnight Hammer, the U.S.-era operation that targeted and destroyed 3 of the 5 key nuclear research facilities inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, apparently did not destroy all of Iran's highly enriched uranium. According to reports from Israeli officials, some of Iran's highly enriched uranium survived U.S. bombings in June's Operation Midnight Hammer, Israeli officials say. So it was a bit of a half and half story. It's half true that a decent amount of the uranium was destroyed. It's also half true that a decent amount of it also made it out as well. So it is showing us that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still in possession of some of its highly enriched uranium. We're believing that that's up to a 90% weapons grade, and at this moment may still be able to work with pressing forward on trying to create a nuclear weapon of mass destruction at some point here within the next 2 years. Outside of that, the Israelis have said that they're not too worried. While also presenting this information, Israeli officials stated that they weren't worried about some stockpiles surviving the attack because they believe that they would notice if Iran tries to rebuild, giving them a chance to strike the Iranians again. So it does appear that the Israelis are stating that while this situation is not exactly to the liking of Israel or the United States, they're not too worried because they could just end up going into Iran and bombing the Islamic Republic of Iran a second time around, knocking out the nuclear facilities before the Iranians can even really get a running chance to get the nuclear program back off the ground and running in full form like it was before Operation Midnight Hammer in the 12-Day War, which was conducted by the State of Israel. Nevertheless, a lot of people right now...
Honestly, The information coming out about the whereabouts of the uranium that Iran had is so confusing at this point, because right now we've heard from the United States they're sticking with their guns. They're saying that all the uranium was destroyed and Iran was not able to evacuate any of the uranium and get it to safety. Then the French came out, and the French intelligence services said, well, actually, the Iranians did get the uranium out. That's just the truth. The Israelis also then said, well, actually, the U.S. is correct. The Iranians did not get the uranium out. And now the Israelis are now backtracking once again and saying, oh, well, actually, some of the uranium made it out. So I think at this point, the only thing that we can deduce from all that is that someone is clearly lying. And I think the ultimate end goal is that all the uranium was not destroyed. Iran was able to get some of it out, and the rest of it is pretty much just empty statements that really don't have much to back it up. Because otherwise, why would France be saying that they got some out? Why would Israel now be saying that as well? Unless it was just, lies all the way around. Well, I grabbed a spot right here. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I'd have to say that I think that the uranium being half intact is largely what we would understand to be true. It would be very difficult to make the claim or the assertion that all of the uranium was entirely destroyed, no question about it, no doubt about it, considering that there are several facilities like Pickaxe Mountain that were not hit at all, and it could have easily hit or stored the uranium during the entirety of the strikes. It may have been storing the uranium before the strikes were even conducted. It could be highly possible that the Natanz uranium enrichment facility operated like this, and I'll try and explain it the best I can, while for some reason the Google Maps is having a bit of an issue. So let me go down here to Natanz really quickly. So this is generally what we could understand with both Fordo as well as the Natanz nuclear facility. The enrichment plant at Natanz is actually within this area right here of the facility. It's just a little bit below ground, unlike Fordo, which is several hundred feet underground inside of a mountain. So they would enrich the uranium inside of this facility, load up the enriched uranium, and then take it on a short drive up into the mountains into the storage facility at Pickaxe Mountain, and then drop it off there, ensuring that it was safe for the foreseeable future. That is a highly likely thing, so there is a decent chance, considering that Pickaxe Mountain was completely untouched, that there is still a decent amount of enriched uranium, of possibly even a weapons grade, that has still survived inside the Islamic Republic of Iran. And the Iranians have made it very clear that they are going to be working on restarting their nuclear weapons program, which, beyond the fact whether they were able to keep any enriched uranium or not after the strikes, they will be making more of it at some point in the future. They will start to rebuild centrifuges, they will start to take the enriched uranium they have or will get and continue to work towards creating a nuclear weapon. It's more than obvious and incredibly clear at this point that the Iranians are still working towards a nuclear weapon, and that they generally were able to possess or hold on to some of the enriched uranium that they had even after Operation Midnight Hammer. Meaning, as a result of that, that the U.S. airstrikes and their original primary objectives were not completely achieved, and for that reason, we might have to reassess Operation Midnight Hammer as a failure for the large part, because it does not appear that the operation was entirely successful in actually destroying the enriched uranium. It was successful in destroying some of the key facilities and pretty much rendering them completely inoperable, at least for the long term, but still, the enriched uranium is at large and still somewhere out in the country, and for that matter, it appears that the situation that's been largely unresolved. And not only that, I'd also have to say that if the United States wanted to stop them from being able to enrich any further uranium, and the fact that Pickaxe Mountain and a couple of other nuclear facilities are still intact that may have centrifuge complexes inside of them, they could still be enriching uranium at this moment, and may have even been enriching uranium the day after the Midnight Hammer strikes. So once again, it does not appear that Midnight Hammer, at least with all of the intelligence and information that we're getting at this moment, was entirely successful at all, and it appears that while it did damage a lot of key facilities, it did not really do anything but slow down the nuclear weapons program, and that further action would be needed by the United States to actually deal with the Iranian nuclear weapons program once and for all, and to stop them from possessing or using a nuclear weapon inside the Islamic Republic of Iran. Nevertheless, moving on.
Honestly, that is, in my opinion, it's okay, in my opinion, that the U.S. was not able to take out the nuclear program in one clean sweep. Like, obviously, it would have been good to do that, but it wasn't a necessity to take it out in one clean sweep. The only part where I have a problem is if the U.S. is going to try to cover it up, the fact that they did not take it out in the first strike, and then they're going to try to pretend like there's no problem whatsoever, that's where the problem comes in my opinion. If the U.S. government simply said, look, we went in the first time, we tried our best to take out their nuclear program, and despite our best efforts, we did not successfully take it out. So we're going to go in a second time to take care of it. I don't think many people would find a problem with that. I think most people would say, well, hey, at least they're being honest with us. They're saying what they need to do, and they're going to go back in and do it. But the problem is, like, clearly someone's lying here. I'm not saying who's lying. It could be Israel. It could be France. It could be the United States. Someone's telling a story, because obviously you don't have all these different versions of the story about the uranium escaping unless one of them's a lie. So in my opinion, if they would just be straight up with people and say what the actual situation is, most people would accept that. Some people would still give them a hard time about not taking out the first sweep, but they'd be much better off just saying the truth.
I would have to agree. It's not really looking like it's all too good at the moment. And to just throw this out there, the IAEA said that, the French said that, the Israelis said that, everyone everywhere is saying it except for the United States. And so if you generally hear that everyone else is saying one thing and the United States is saying something different, it generally would lead you to believe that someone is not exactly saying the truth about the situation inside of Iran and the situation with the missing uranium. That would generally be what we could deduce from that. So it does appear that according to everyone, and I see some people, and this is something that I get very, very tired of, but some people in the chat, I'm not dying in the Middle East because Israel's intelligence. It's not Israel's intelligence. It's literally everyone in the world's intelligence except for ours. It's the UN's IAEA, it's the French, it's literally anyone else who was involved in trying to gather intelligence about the situation. They're all saying something different, and the United States is saying something else completely different from them. They're all saying that some of it was destroyed, but some of it is intact. The United States is saying that literally not a gram survived, and all of it was completely destroyed. And to be entirely honest with y'all, it just sounds like a more realistic sort of a statement from everyone else that there was some that survived. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense that every single gram down to the micrometer was destroyed in the process of Midnight Hammer. That just wouldn't even make a lot of sense. It would be something if we said that they have such a small amount of enriched uranium that there is no way they could enrich that into a weapon. That would make a lot more sense to say. But saying that literally all of it was destroyed and there's none left at all, that is unrealistic, largely just as an assessment in itself, to be entirely honest. Because that's something that even when I said it had been completely destroyed, that largely was the assumption that there's still going to be a small amount probably left, but it's not going to be anything big enough to do something with, rather than just say that they still have a tiny fractional amount of it. So still, it does appear that at the moment, the United States and really the greater Western world has a lot to do if we want to continue to try and work towards denuclearizing the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's not going to be a simple one and done kind of a situation. It might be a lot more complicated. It might be a lot more complex. And if you do not want to be under the threat of Iranian nuclear weapons for the rest of your life, then it probably would be prudent to agree that we need to take some kind of action against the Islamic Republic of Iran before they can put you under a nuclear crosshair. Nevertheless, a lot of people are also talking about the current situation inside the southern Red Sea with the Yemeni Houthis. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so to get off the topic there for a second about the uranium potentially being missing from Iran, we do have a situation still going on in the Red Sea, and right now reports have confirmed that the Houthis have taken at least 6 hostages from the latest ship in the Red Sea, which was the Eternity Sea, and what are your thoughts about that? So 48% said the U.S. should rescue those guys on their own accord, while 20% said Israel should be the one to rescue those hostages, and 17% said it's really up to the shipping company and also the home country of those sailors. Now, this is a tricky one right here, because now when hostages get involved, that makes the situation a lot different. And now human lives are at stake, and the Houthis are naturally going to abuse the hell out of these hostages, unfortunately. That's just part of the game. And it looks like they're going to be staying there in Yemen until somebody rescues them or either negotiates their release from the Houthi forces. So it's a bit tricky because the U.S. can't handle everything. Like, we're already in so many different problems right now. It's hard to get tied up with hostages right now at this very moment. So I would generally say it's up to the home country. These are Filipino sailors, and they were on a ship which I believe is flagged out of Liberia. So one of these countries, which the people belong to, they're citizens of the country, I believe of the Philippines, most likely is probably where they're from. They're Filipino, but they could be from a different country. There's no telling. But that country, whichever country that is, should be the one to step in and try to negotiate this. And then if they need help, maybe the U.S. could step in and help them. But some countries got to step up here. Like, the U.S. can't handle every single small thing popping up. This is obviously bad, and the hostages need to be freed. But we've got a lot going on right now. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that as far as freedom of navigation, that's a primary American concern. But as far as hostages hostages being taken, those hostages are the responsibility of whatever nationality they're from. And from what we're hearing, they're actually Filipino nationals. So for that reason, it'll be the responsibility of the Filipino government to send a representative of their nation to try and negotiate with the Houthis for their safe release. Unfortunately, we can't be everywhere in the world all the time doing everything, and this is one of the situations where we have to say that this sort of a problem falls entirely on a foreign country like the Philippines, where these people are natural citizens of, to be able to speak for their safe release. Because this is a situation that largely falls out of the purview of American interests, or for that matter, American attention. Now, if we were talking about these Philippine sailors and their safety while they were on board the vessel, the Eternity Sea within the Southern Red Sea, that's actually a significant part of American economic interest and global international freedom of navigation laws. But considering that the vessel has been sunk, to our negligence or not, that's up to y'all to talk about, but considering that the vessel's been sunk and they've now been taken hostage, that's still an issue for the Philippines. That's not an issue for the United States directly. And so I hope that addresses that somewhat well, at least in my opinion, because I would have to say that the United States doesn't necessarily have a responsibility to send the Department of State, which largely represents American interests and American citizenry abroad, to speak on the behalf of Filipino citizens who have no stake or citizenship inside the United States of America. And so with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well. But outside of that, we have been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran is getting hit in ways that are a little bit hard to measure. Well, hard to measure, not really. They were very easy to measure, as a matter of fact, because within Western Tehran today, we were able to see some smoke rising. Let me show it to y'all. An apartment had been hit. By what? We don't know. We were told that it might be an FPV drone. We were told it might have been a bomb. We were told that it might have been an ATGM. We're not really sure which it was, but we could see that an apartment had its walls blown out. And someone else also apparently didn't have that great of a day, because we were able to hear not long after that the Iranian government has confirmed that the Iranian Army Chief of Staff, General Abdul Rahim Mousavi, has been assassinated in Tehran less than a month after his appointment on June 13th. And this is the guy that actually got plastered inside of that apartment. It was the Iranian Army Chief of Staff. It's a little bit interesting to me that these high-up officials in Iran are living in common apartments. You would generally think they would have some sort of housing for them in a secure location, like, you know, on a base or something like that, but it was just a normal apartment within Tehran. But he ended up getting hit in that apartment and killed. He was in there. So we do not know at the moment who hit the building. It's the Mossad, but we do not know officially who hit the building, what they hit the building with, or any other additional details. Rather than the building was hit with an explosive, it was a pinpoint explosive onto that wall in that apartment, and it ended up killing that specific Army Chief of Staff. So it does look like, fortunately for some people in the Iranian Armed Forces, the position of Army Chief of Staff is open. Unfortunately for them, it looks like if they take the position, they also will not be in it for that long. Outside of that, we also were able to hear that Iranian airspace is emptying out again. We were able to see that on flight radar today, which is quite interesting. We also were able to hear, on top of that, that the Iranians are going to be acquiring the J-10. That's at least what we're hearing today. Also, look at that. Look at that right there. Now, I'm sure, Matthew, I am certain, and as a matter of fact, I am more than certain, that is a Israeli Python air-to-air missile on board this Chinese J-10. Let me go pull that up really quickly. Python missile. Let me go get one of the older variants. Yeah, like this one. The Python 3, right here. Doesn't that look just like a Python 3?
It looks similar to it. I'm always on the fence. Did China rip it off and make their own version of it, or did Israel give them some?
Well, the Israelis technically sold the tech for their Pythons to the Chinese, so it's a license-built version of it. Kind of like the whole entire aircraft, the J-10 is a license-built version of an Israeli concept, which is something that a lot of people don't know. Let me go pull up the Israeli Lavi aircraft. Let me go pull this up, because a lot of y'all might be interested to know this. This is a different time in history, but look at this right here. This is the Israeli Lavi. This is the Chinese J-10. The Israelis back in the day didn't really care too much because China wasn't really a military threat at the moment. Back in the 90s when they made this deal with the Chinese, but the Chinese approached the Israeli arms industry, the IAI, which came up with the Lavi concept and said, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Would you mind if you sold that to us? Because we would like to make a plane out of that if you're not going to do anything with it." So pretty much the Chinese did the arms equivalent of, "Hey, are you going to eat that?" And the Israelis said no. So they sold them the plans. So then the Chinese further modified it just a little bit extra. And out of the Lavi, which you can see right here, they came up with a Chengdu J-10. And this is pretty much the backbone of the Chinese Air Force in the modern air fighting age. So a little bit interesting with that. Let me see if I can get you all another picture of the Lavi. Here you go. This really makes it pronounced how similar the two are. I mean, it's not even like a conspiracy. The Israelis literally sold the tech to the Chinese. This is a publicly known sort of fact about it. So it's a little bit interesting. They also did sell them the plans for the Python 3 as well, for them to be able to license produce the Python 3. So that's also a closer in, I believe they're called a Fox 3 short range air-to-air missile that the Chinese Air Force also has access to as well.
I think the Israelis are just trying to get the bag, honestly, because the Chinese were going to copy it anyway. So I guess the Israelis thought, well, they're going to steal the design. They're going to like steal it anyway. So we might as well like cash in a little bit and get some money from them at least, because it's going by the wayside anyway. Because in China, when they hear the word copyright in the Chinese military, they read that as China has the right to copy. They don't view that as like you have a right not to copy it. It's like that's their immediate right to take your design and start running with it. So I don't know. Like I guess it could be viewed as maybe like a little bit of a traitor move by Israel, but also at the same time, I guess they're going to steal it anyway. I don't know.
Dude, everyone in America, what? The Israelis sold weapons technology to the Chinese? Meanwhile, the people over the IAI, you ain't got no rolly and no dumb truck. Like, honestly.
I'll tell you what, they got the G-Wagon now. That's all that matters.
It's all that matters, Matthew. It's the truth. Also, by the way, there's one of the first J-10s. It's literally a Lavi, man. Like, look, it's literally a repainted. Here's the normal Lavi in Israel, the one prototype that they made. Here was one of the first J-10s. And it literally was a copy to verbatim of the Lavi. And then they modified it into this. This is the J-10C, which is the actual production variant.
Very interesting. Looks pretty close.
Yeah, it looks really close. Honestly, I think that they're just ugly all around. Like, I don't even care if it's Israeli. This thing was hideous. And I also think that the J-10 is hideous as well. But still, the Iranians are going to be considering to buy one. So, in a little bit of a roundabout way, just to get to the reason why I explained all that about that, Israel kind of shot themselves in the foot by selling the J-10's plans to China, because the Chinese are now going to be selling the very Israeli plan and concept for the aircraft, and the aircraft itself that was originally an Israeli concept and invention, to the Iranians to use against the Israelis. So I think that ought to be maybe teaching the Israelis a little bit about arms industry dealings, is that you don't just sell weapons technology to countries that might not necessarily be that big of a friend of your country, or they'll just sell the tech and the equipment back to your enemies. So maybe something for the Israelis to learn a little bit, maybe a little bit. I'll be honest with y'all, not really that happy with the whole idea of the Israelis just nonchalantly selling weapons tech to the Chinese back in the day. And I guess this is one of the first times I've ever seen a country quite literally shoot itself in the foot by selling military tech to another country. Once again, making it very clear that if you ever sell military tech to anyone, you've got to be wildly certain that they are an ally. Because it's not always about that bag, because before you know it, your own tech could be bagging you. But anyways, moving on from that, and on into some other news that we've been able to get inside of the Islamic Republic, or more so within the region. We were able to hear that the Israelis have stated that the Houthis will pay the price for their actions. That was according to the Israeli Defense Minister Katz earlier today. So it does appear that the Middle East is back inside of the whole shebang of the fun that's involved in being in Middle Eastern affairs. And we'll be waiting to see how that goes throughout the rest of the future. But before we move on out of the Middle East, I do want to ask y'all, did the uranium survive, or did it not? And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking as well?
All right. So now that we've gotten every version of the story under the sun at this point about where the uranium went that Iran had at their Fordow nuclear facility, Israel is now claiming that some of it, and they're very vague about some of it, have apparently survived the U.S. strikes last month by the B-2 bombers. So what is really going on? Basically, who is lying here and who's not lying? So 73%, pretty much a lot of people, the majority of people, said the uranium likely survived, while 15% said it's a 50-50 chance that it survived or was destroyed, and only 4% said the uranium was destroyed. So pretty much nobody believes the Westerner story about all the uranium getting destroyed. Nobody really believes that. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you for not believing it either. At this point, you have so many countries contradicting the official Western stance that it's kind of hard to believe it even if you wanted to. So that's why I say it's better to be upfront instead of getting caught in a lie like this. It's better to be upfront about it so that way we don't look like clowns later on down the road. But, I'm not in charge, so I don't get to have that say. But I would say the uranium probably did survive. I hate to say that because I'd like to sort of believe the Western stance here, but I believe some of it, at least some of it, did survive. And that would line up with what everybody else is saying as well. But I'm with the 73%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, in my opinion, I would have to be with the 73% as well. The uranium likely survived. We don't know how much of it because people are saying some of it survived and some of it could be 20% or some of it could be 70%. We don't really know how much some is at the moment, but I'm pretty certain that a decent amount of uranium did survive the attacks. It was something because I'll explain a little bit of how the information has been coming out for a while here. Even right after the attack was conducted, there were people in Israel, people in the West, people in America, people in the IAEA that were literally saying within just hours of the attack, we were covering it live when they were saying it, that it looks like there was some uranium that survived, or that the damage might not be that severe. And oh, brother, the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense threw a hissy fit over that. These liars, why don't they talk about how long the pilots were in the plane, stuff like that? And clearly, there's no way that this could have been a failure. I mean, to admit that the United States may have not been able to conduct a mission or an operation to its full completion, or that we might need to do more, that's just ridiculous. It was completely destroyed. Anyone saying otherwise is just a detractor. And so we generally started to go with those statements because for some reason, right after that, almost everyone but the IAEA would then switch their story to, oh yeah, it was definitely all destroyed now. And that's what they went with. And then later on, everyone started switching their story, including even U.S. intelligence services, to, well, while it was somewhat destroyed, there is still some of it that survived. And now there's a lot of reports coming out that some of it has survived. So it's quite clear that, at least at the beginning, there was an attempt to save face because the uranium was not completely destroyed. But now as time's passing, people are making it quite clear that the uranium was not completely destroyed, and there is still a significant amount of uranium somewhere out there at large inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So that's what I generally say at this point. I would say that it would be a lot better to just be flat out honest. And if the operation didn't go well, just have said from the outset, it did pretty good in destroying the facilities, but the uranium's still at large, and we're going to have to go and try and figure out how to take care of the uranium or deal with that problem. That's what would have been a lot better of a statement to make than trying to call anyone who said, hey, look, the uranium appears to have survived, a liar, because it doesn't appear that anyone was lying about that. It appears to now be largely a factually accurate statement that was being made literally just hours after the attack had concluded. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. But I see a lot of people talking about different kinds of nuclear bombs, how much explosive filler could be made, and that's a pretty significant reason why this is a somewhat dangerous thing to try and cover up or lie about if it didn't go too well. If it didn't go well, it just didn't go well. Failures happen. Like, it's nothing to be ashamed about. It was still an amazing and flawless operation and execution. And as far as from a military standpoint, it couldn't have gone any better. But the problem is that the Iranians did get a little bit of a jump on us on getting the uranium out of the areas that were to be hit, and that some of it did manage to survive. That isn't an issue. That's just that they were apparently a step ahead of us somehow, and now we'll have to account for that and fix that problem. I don't know what it is with people acting like sometimes a failure is just a complete failure and we're cooked and it's over. And I don't really know why the U.S. leadership is also scared of that either, because I see some people in the chat saying, you liar, like they're acting like, like the president's honor is on the fact that the uranium was destroyed or not. Like, even if it wasn't destroyed, we can't admit that because it would look bad on the president. It doesn't. What looks bad on the president, however, I will say, is that if it wasn't completely destroyed, and we know that, which we generally do at this point, to keep on insisting that it was completely destroyed is just trying to live in a fantasy, and one that is not beneficial or conducive to any sort of a positive outcome for the country. It's better at this point to know and say, look, our initial intelligence said that it was destroyed, but the intelligence is involved. Like, even at this point, you could save face with just saying it this way. Our initial intelligence said that it was completely destroyed. I was very sure and confident in that. But as other intelligence agencies like the CIA have had a better look at it, and also other foreign intelligence agencies like the French, the IAEA, and so on, it's becoming incredibly clear that there is some uranium that survived, and we're going to have to fix that issue. That would be a good way to get about it even right now, even with the statements that have been made in the past that it was certainly destroyed 100%. You could just say that the intelligence evolved. Now we have a different picture. We're going to have to deal with that one instead of the one we thought it was. That would generally be fine, in my opinion. I don't really think there's a lot of issues that could be made about that. Everyone just has to go, okay, well, that is the case, and now we have to work with that and live with that as a reality. So with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, at least from the best information we have at the moment. But moving on out of the Islamic Republic of Iran and on into the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., there's been a significant amount of developments that just cover in pretty much bullet points over the course of the day. We were able to hear that the U.S. Department of Defense is going to be massively increasing drone production for the armed forces. We've also been able to hear that the president will be making a major statement on the Russian Federation coming this Monday. We've also been able to hear that the president is soon to use his presidential drawdown authorities to issue $300 million worth of arms support to the state of Ukraine. And according to the U.S. Secretary of State, the Russian Federation has lost 100,000 killed in action, not wounded, killed in action, since the beginning of this year, which is incredibly high, because if we were to assume that that is a metric of 1 killed for every 2 to 3 wounded, that actually means that the Russians have lost about 400,000 casualties throughout the course of this year, including wounded and killed, which is quite a significant number, and is very reflective, actually, of the Ukrainian casualty report that comes out of the Ukrainian MOD every day. That's actually pretty much directly on par with the kind of situation that the U.S. government is stating just today about the amount of Russian killed in action that there is alone. So it is once again showing this is as far as the Ukrainian kill count is going on their casualty report. It's actually close to damn near being right on the mark, at least based on the statements from the Secretary of State earlier today. We have also been able to hear outside of that in East Asia some fairly large developments. While the United States is moving back into supporting Ukraine in full, it appears that the Secretary of State of the United States and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia did meet today inside of Malaysia at Kuala Lumpur. I won't be able to show the clip. It's from a Russian source, but we can see here that there is Horseface, and then there's also the Secretary of State as well. They said that there was some promising involvements that came out of that, but I wouldn't hang my hat on that much at all. But we did hear that the president also said right after that he's going to have to reassess the Russian situation in a couple of weeks. So we'll just leave it at that. Moving on from that and on into the Fujian province in the Eastern Theater Command, we've also been able to see that the People's Liberation Army has been conducting even more large amphibious exercises just off of the coast of Taiwan, about 100 miles away. Quite a significant amount of amphibious vehicles that we could see here in this clip.
Really crazy to see these vehicles actually going to the water like that, like out here just in the wide open. Like these things just do not look like they're supposed to float, but yet they work. They just work. I mean, now there's accidents that happen with them, like some unfortunate accidents from time to time, but it's just wild to see a hunk of metal like that that's floating so well.
Yeah, you know, I forgot what these things are called. Everything in China is named like it came straight from a fax machine. Like these things are like a ZBD something something or a ZTZ or something along those lines. We could try and look into it. PLAA equipment. Let me go get that really quickly. And we should be able to look at the... we don't want the aircraft. We want the equipment. There we go. Let's scroll on down. We're not going to look at all the little minutia. What the hell was that, though? A frag grenade. That is one goofy-looking frag. Like, the fuse is bigger than the explosive. Anyways, let's keep going. What the hell? Dude, that's literally like a Colt 1903. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, it looks like kind of like it, yeah.
Yeah, that's busted. Anyways, let's keep going. Okay, so here's one of them. This is a PLL-05. This thing is amphibious, and it does generally look like it's based off of some sort of a dang, probably a Zizou from Finland, or it could also be based off of the duck. I forgot what the duck is called from France, but beyond that, let's keep going. We'll eventually find this. Let's see here. It should be under. Let's see here. We've made it to export-oriented equipment, so we want to go back up. This is somewhere up here. Let's see here. Did I pass it at some point? Did I pass it? No, actually I didn't. So let's scroll on down then to here. Ah, here we go. Here we go, folks. We found it. Let me see. Ah, yes. We're getting very close. We're getting into the amphibious vehicles. Let's see. It's not the ZBL. These are tracked. So we have, these are actually amphibious as well. Like, at least from what I've heard and what I've seen. But we are looking for the one that is tracked with the gun to the very rear of the hull. And we'll eventually find that, folks. We will eventually find it. Or maybe we won't. This list is endless. It's insane, as a matter of fact. My God.
That seems like a lost cause right here. They've got a little bit of everything.
This is a lost cause. Absolutely lost cause. Like where the hell are they? I don't even know. And they have an endless amount of export-based equipment. So we won't be able to say what it is. It's a ZBD of some kind. I just unfortunately do not know the exact ZBD, which it is. But beyond that, they were involved in a large amount of the amphibious operations that we saw on film. And once again, these are a part of the Eastern Theater Command, and most likely the 92nd, the 93rd, or I believe it's the 91st Group Armies that are under the command of the Eastern Theater Command. But moving on from that and out of that news inside the Taiwan Strait, we've also been able to hear that Xi Jinping has finally emerged from the shadows. Many of y'all have known that Xi Jinping has been missing for exactly 2 weeks now, 14 straight days. He's not been seen in public. Xi Jinping was finally seen in public today, and this is the first thing that he said. There is no force on earth that can stop China from reclaiming Taiwan. And he also said it while wearing his little army fatigue with the Mandarin collar right here as well. That was a picture of him today, a proof of life of a sort. But it does appear that Xi is alive and he's well. And he's back to making the statements that they've been making for about 1.5 years now, that they're going to be forcefully reunifying Taiwan, whether they want it to happen or not. And it's leading a lot of people to talk about Xi Jinping's plans with Taiwan, and if an invasion is likely or not. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so Xi Jinping, he came out of the hiding hole today to come out and tell us a very whopping statement. He said no force on earth can stop the Taiwan invasion. So the big question to the audience is it becoming likely that Taiwan will be invaded very soon? So 60% of the audience said Xi is looking to speed up the invasion very quickly, while 27% said Xi is just repeating propaganda, and 9% said it seems like a 50-50 chance. And like I've been saying, I'm going to stick to my guns on this. China, and Xi Jinping specifically, is facing an internal political crisis. When that happens, that speeds up and also accelerates the odds of an invasion of Taiwan, because that gives them a distraction away from those domestic internal political issues. So that is why the first statement he made when he came out was about invading Taiwan, because that's what's on the top of Xi's mind, is starting a new distraction. And that's what he's going to focus on going into the very near future in the coming months. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that Xi is most likely still aiming for an invasion of Taiwan, but I'd still have to say that it's probably going to be coming within the next 2 years, because this rhetoric isn't exactly new. We have seen Xi Jinping and other high-level officials in the government making these statements really throughout most of 2024 and most of 2025, which is showing that these statements might be falling within the typical kind of statements that have been made in the Chinese government recently. It's not really showing that it's being massively springboarded at the moment, that this is what they're going to be doing literally within months from now, but it does appear that this is still going to be happening at some point in the future. But we also have to remember that Chinese statements about the forceful reunification of Taiwan have been something that have been going on for quite a long time, literally since the end of the Chinese Civil War. It's just that Xi Jinping has put this up as one of the most important things to be conducted under his reign ever since he took power back back in 2012. And also because of that reason, we've seen that the People's Liberation Army as a whole has been building and structuring itself to prepare for that conflict to eventually retake Taiwan if diplomatic solutions to the situation fail, which clearly they are failing at the moment and will never really succeed because the Taiwanese do not want to become a part of a Chinese communist governmental system. So with that in mind, I think that the Chinese aren't necessarily looking to speed up the invasion for any further than they already have, because 2028 is already a pretty early timetable at the moment, or 2027. But as far as it happening in 2026 or 2025, shipbuilders can only work so fast in China, even at the speed that they're working at right now. And as far as an amphibious landing operation on Taiwan to forcibly take it, that is still a good ways off in the future. We're expecting that the Chinese Navy would probably be ready for that by 2027 at the best. So it's still about a year or two off, even now, with the statements that the Chinese government is making. Because no matter how many statements someone makes, there are realistic limitations, and the fact that they cannot land or support a large enough landing force on the island to actually be able to forcibly take it after a bombardment campaign by the Air Force and Navy, that pretty much limits them from being able to really take the island, even if they wanted to right now. So I'm still thinking that it's going to be a little ways away, maybe 2027, mid 2027 or so, so about another 2 years out from this point. But with that, I hope that does address that well, in my opinion, because we've also gotten some other big news coming out of the People's Republic of China. We have been able to hear that apparently a new tank is to be unveiled, but for now they don't want to show it, so they put them in literal coat cages and then drove them around the streets. Not really seen stuff like this before.
You know what they're doing here?
What are they doing?
They're treating the tanks. You know, like when a car company unveils like a brand new like high-end car they've just developed, let's say Porsche or something, they'll typically take the Porsche, the new model, out to the Nürburgring in Germany to go test it on the track, and they'll usually wrap it in like this weird like optical illusion camouflage to try to not let people see what the design really looks like until the release date. It's like they're treating military tanks like it's some type of like highly anticipated public release, like it's something that's going to be on the consumer market or something. It's kind of goofy.
It's actually stupid, man. And what's even more stupid is that someone could have just gotten a flashlight and shined it through the giant view visor that they have on the front of this thing and just seen what they were. I don't know why no one did that, probably because they would be arrested. But beyond that, it's like, you could just look in there and kind of see what the tank is. I will say that they sound beefy.
They actually sound good, I will admit, too.
And here comes a few more. Each one has this, like, semi-truck supporting it almost. But
Damn, they finally ripped off those GM crate engines, dang it.
Dag nabbit, man, they got the scat pack on this thing, man. Like, you know, it's like a scatted Hellcat or something like that. But anyways, with that, it is an interesting thing to note. And we've also been able to hear of other Chinese military innovations. For example, they've created a cyborg bee, at least according to their statements recently. They have put computer technology, or of some kind, inside of the brain of a bee, and also put a computer chip in its abdomen. I don't know why. Like, this is the illustration that they gave, though. And apparently it has a 90% success rate, and it could serve as a military scout. My issue with that, however, is how the hell do you actually get a camera feed from the eyeballs of a bee? Like, they haven't really described that part yet. It's not like the bee can fly back and go, you know, it's like they can't do that. It can't speak. So it's like, how the hell did they get info out of the bee? Like, I don't know. And it's like, what use does this really have?
And then the Chinese must have somebody like me working in there, because, you know, just yesterday I was making a whole like big deal about, you know, putting bugs and putting cameras and like hearing devices and like those animals that we were looking at that are living in Yemen, so we can get some like intel on the Houthis. Like, this is what the Chinese are doing in real life. But honestly, I'm impressed. Like, if this is actually true and it's not bullcrap that they're putting out about the bees being bugged, that's actually impressive. It's kind of like, now obviously it's inhumane to like mess with a bee like that. They're installing electronics in the bee's body. That's obviously not good. But the fact that they have a biological insect or animal that has electronics in it like that and can actually be a 90% success rate on actually spying on people, that's scary and it's also incredible at the same time.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I think this is straight up propaganda because
It could be. It could
yeah,
be.
because think about it, man. It's like one, how do they keep connection with the bee? Like if y'all don't know about this, bees are greatly affected as far as their abilities to function normally by any kind of electromagnetic pulse of any kind, including those from 5G towers, 4G towers, those sorts of things. So literally attaching a microchip and then controlling the bee through the pulses, that bee's dead. Like that bee is going to die really quickly. Like they cannot handle that sort of a thing at all, hardly. So it's like, so the bee's dead. Like the bee's not living. So it generally the system works with the bees surviving. It's almost like a parasitic sort of a process. So the bee dies, the system dies. Like that's pretty much how it works. Also, on top of that, it's like how in the world could they use this as a military scout, considering that there's no viable way to gather any information or intelligence either through some sort of an optical feed or some sort of a communication system attached to the bee. The bee can't speak English, and you also can't get a live feed of what its eyeballs are looking at. So it makes no sense. Like this just does not make any sense at all. So I generally say,
They would have to have some like main mother bee or like a mothership like device or something nearby to all the bees to be able to have enough signal strength to be able to get it off the bee, because whatever transmitter is inside that bee, it is like very, very small transmitters. So it's not going to have much range on it, obviously. So they'd have to have some device close to the bees to be able to get the signals off of them. But that's just as my layman's understanding of it. But I don't know. Like it seems improbable, but at the same time, though, it's not impossible. Like it could be possible, but a 90% success rate on the biological spy bees, I don't know. Like, that might be exaggerated.
well, think about it, man. They're doing brain surgery on a bee. It's already tough enough to do brain surgery on a human-sized brain, much less a bee-sized brain, and then to actually get it to where it can input commands. Like this is almost a work of pure fiction at this point. I would never expect that, especially this would have a 90% success rate. Or it's like a 90% success rate. How many bees do they have to conduct bee brain surgery on to get to this 90% success rate? Like, how many of them just end up dying in the brain bee surgery side of things? Like this does not work. This is a work of pure fiction. They also have another work of pure fiction. This is not the first time we've heard something like this, folks, but it certainly won't be the last. The Chinese have unveiled a new radar today, the JY-27B, pictured here, that apparently is able to detect, in long-range form, mind you, the F-22 and the F-35. Where have we heard this before, Matthew? I swear that Iran said that they also developed a radar of the same type that could also detect an F-35 Lightning at hundreds of miles away and completely break through its stealth coding and its stealth abilities, or the F-22. And I always find it interesting that every single country wants to say we've created a radar that's busted the F-22 or the F-35 or the stealth abilities of any stealth aircraft, because the truth is that they haven't. Like no one has. And also, how do they prove that? This thing can see an F-22 and an F-35. How do they prove that when no F-22 or F-35 is flown close enough to the Chinese anywhere in the world for them to actually get a radar profile signature or an attempted radar profile signature of an F-22 or an F-35 to be able to figure out how to specifically design a radar to be able to send out its radar pulses and then get them back properly to pick up where an F-22 or an F-35 was? I'm highly doubting that this information is true, because the Iranians also put out information about this a while ago, it was like about a year ago, and then they seemed pretty surprised that they got bombed during Operation Midnight Hammer, which wouldn't be the case if they could see those aircraft coming. And much less, why in the world were they surprised by the Israeli airstrikes that happened for 12 straight days by F-15s and F-16s, which aren't even stealth, if they had radars that could pick up even an F-35 or an F-22 hundreds of miles away? Like, none of that makes any sense, and I think that the Chinese are going with the same kind of propaganda story and hoping that people believe it, because I'm not believing that at all. I'm not buying it. There's just no way in hell that they're picking up an F-22 and an F-35 with a radar. It's just not happening yet. The technology is not there. Give it another 20 or 30 years, it might be there. But at the present day, absolutely not. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but the Chinese, they give us no reason to have faith in their weapons at all. Like, none of them have been tested against an actual real life adversary. The Indians do not count. They're not a real adversary. Their biggest adversary is themselves. So they don't count. The Pakistanis got some J-10s. They flew them around a little bit. The Indians pretty much crashed most of their aircraft. They're still crashing them. They're going for a record right now. So it's a really tough sell for me to say, yeah, Chinese weapon systems are good, considering that every single one of their tanks has the same ammo carousel setup that a Russian tank would have, and every single one of their aircraft that isn't brand spanking new or an Israeli ripoff is a Soviet design. Like, if you go look at it, it's mostly all Soviet era stuff that's just being modified by the Chinese. All of their aircraft carriers are like that. All their tanks like that, or most of their aircraft are like that. Nothing is exactly new. Let me go Chinese Air Force equipment. Let me show y'all this, because this is something that nobody ever talks about. And they're like, oh, they have a big Navy and a big Air Force. But it's like, yeah, but if you look at it, though, look at this. Combat aircraft. Well, actually, we want to go to the PLAAF. Let me go to this really quickly. As far as combat aircraft, I just want to show you this really quickly again, because we've got to get this point out over and over and over again. So, here are... Oh, those are air defense. What in the hell? Where in the world are the aircraft, then? Why in the world is it so hard to find any aircraft or equipment these days? I don't know what it is with this. Hold up. That's got to be around here somewhere. So hold up, wait a minute. People's Liberation Army Air Force. You gotta be kidding me. They don't show... Oh, okay, hold up, folks, hold up. We ought to be able to find this somewhere. Okay, so we'll just go over them. We'll just go over them one by one. They have the J8. Old, dated, absolutely garbage, even when it was put into service. They have the J-10 as a Lavi ripoff. It's okay, but it's not going to do exceptionally well. It's not the best thing in the world. They have the J-11. That's literally an Su-27. It's a licensed variant of it. The J-16, which is an Su-30. They have a large amount of those. They also have the J-20, F-22 ripoff. We do not know how good it is, and the fact that they're adding weapons operators on some of them in their refits, it's suggesting that weapon-wise, these things were not that efficient. They also have the J-35A ripoff of the F-35. We don't even know how good that thing could be. We don't even know if it's even a really usable aircraft at all, and there's not a lot of them. They also have just loads of Su-27s, literally a Soviet aircraft, Su-30 MKKs, once again, Soviet aircraft. They have Su-35s, modern Russian version of the Su-27, still not that good. And that's all their fighter aircraft. Every single one of them, that's all of them. So it's like, as far as them having any kind of a competent radar system, considering that everything else is built off of some sort of a Soviet platform for the large part, except for save a few, I'm not expecting that a radar could have ever done such a thing like that, or ever will do such a thing like that. But moving on out of the Chinese news, it is time for us to get on out of the wonderful weapons of wonder, or the Wunderwaffe, if you want to call them that, inside of China. We are going to be moving on into the Ukrainian news and the European news as well. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions, and then we'll be getting on into the rest of the news. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night. This one is going to go to James McEldoon, who put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, James, for that support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And James said, I have to call Leaf Spring on you by what you mean destroyed. And you can't destroy uranium unless in a reactor or bomb. And I think you mean something like buried or unavailable or hit and disposed. Just my opinion.
Thank you for the support, James. But let's see. Well, I mean, with as far as destroyed, though, you can physically destroy something by blowing it up. That's kind of like saying you can't destroy a tank because, yes, you blew open a hole in its armor, but all of that just turned into atomized particles of steel and it's floating around in the air. You can destroy it by bombing it. Like we can generally
It gets scattered.
Yeah, it gets scattered. Yeah, let me go pull this up. I'm pretty sure that you can end up destroying uranium. Can you destroy uranium? Let's just pull it up. Let's see. Let's see. Let me see here. So you can't destroy it by just blasting it into oblivion. Like you're not going to destroy it. You like as far as the rules of, I believe it's the um rules of, or the laws of nature go, you cannot destroy anything. Like you can burn a log of wood, and that log of wood is going to turn into carbon and other trace elements that are spread around in the fire, which is what the smoke is. Like you can never destroy an atom of anything. What you can do though is that you can hit it with a bomb and blast it into small amounts of pretty much a thin spread film or a dust that's just carried off somewhere else and deposited over a wide area, meaning that it ceases to exist. So that's generally what that means. If you hit something and blow it up, and that thing is then spread in small particles over a wide area, that's largely considered to be destroyed. Because we could use that argument for literally anything. You could say, was Hiroshima destroyed? Not quite. Well, a nuclear bomb dropped on top of the city and killed 70,000 people. It's just the matter that their atoms were deposited over a wide area, so they truly weren't destroyed. It's just that they were spread out over a wide. We could kind of use the same sort of a thing with those buildings. I'm sure if you scour the countryside outside of Hiroshima after the atomic bomb was dropped there, you could end up getting enough particles and atoms, if you had the ability, to pretty much rebuild Hiroshima from the ground up, and try and eventually rebuild it in that form. So I would generally say that while that is the case, at the same time, though, if you hit something with a bomb and you scatter it over a wide area, or you just completely stop it from being gathered up into a high purity form, then it pretty much is destroyed for that effort. The issue, however, is that that's not really what we're seeing right now here in Iran. Is that that's not the issue. It wasn't that some of the uranium survived because it was hit with a bomb, but technically by the first law of thermodynamics or whatever, it didn't actually destroy the uranium. It was just spread around, and the Iranians whipped out a vacuum and vacuumed it back up. The reality is that some of it was in Pickaxe Mountain or elsewhere, and it just generally survived not even getting bombed in the first place, to be spread out over a wide area, or to almost nearly be vaporized, almost in a sense, or to create a high level of radioactivity, or to destroy the facility it was in where you can't access it, or anything along those lines. It's just that some of it literally survived, while some of it ended up being either inaccessible or turned into a fine dust. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And I see what you're saying, but at the same time, that is not necessarily how that would work per se. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our second super chat here, this one goes to Howard Mendelson, another longtime channel legend who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Howard, for that support.
Hey!
He said, Xi wants to invade while we still have, let's see here. Sadly, Howard, I can't read it off. But basically what Howard's trying to say in theory, or at least in principle, is Xi is trying to take this opportunity while he views the United States as being weak to invade Taiwan. And he's not going to let this opportunity pass him up, in Howard's opinion.
And I would have to say that generally, I think that would be the case no matter who was in charge, to be entirely honest, because like the truth of the matter is that as far as foreign policy goes, everyone has a weak stance these days. There isn't such a thing as a strong stance. It doesn't matter if it was the current president, the last president, or the presidential candidate in the last election that went up against the current president. All of them have a very weak stance in foreign policy, an insanely weak stance in foreign policy. I've literally not seen a difference in any of them. Like, some people would insist that the current president is different than the last, but when you actually assess the decisions and actions that are being made, they're literally the same. And as far as that goes, I would have to generally agree on a surface level, not getting political, that the Chinese do want to take advantage of the weak kind of leadership in the country that keeps permeating through every administration and every political party. But I wouldn't say that it's specifically endemic to this administration, because to say, like, for example, just to be entirely frank, to say that Biden, Kamala, or Trump would do any different, they're all doing the same. Like to be entirely honest, it's not even a theoretical thing. Harris's position was the exact same as Biden's, and Biden's is the exact same as Trump's. They're all literally identical. So it would have been a weak foreign policy approach from any of the three, because you can literally look at the last administration stance in the Middle East, and it was as weak as the current administration stance in the Middle East. And then considering that the candidate for that party also had the same position and said, we want to take everything anything that this administration is doing and just carry it on for another 4 years, we already knew that their foreign policy stance was also going to be weak in the Middle East, East Asia, and elsewhere. So as far as the Taiwanese situation, I think we would have been in the same pickle no matter who ended up becoming president out of those three, and we will also be in that same pickle no matter who's becoming president within the next 4 years in the next upcoming election, because
Yeah,
Mhm.
if you look at just their policies on their face, the last president was very weak on Taiwan. He wouldn't even commit publicly until I think the very last second to finally say that he would come to Taiwan's aid if they needed help and they were invaded by China. This current administration, they're not making any commitments either. They're saying things that are kind of like backhanded, like they might go and help Taiwan, but they're really not saying anything in the forefront, like we're definitely going to go help Taiwan and defend them if they're invaded. They're really not saying that either. For some reason, I know the reason why. We're scared of China. Like, that's the truth of it. We're not really sure if we want to get in the mix of Taiwan yet. We're going to make that decision at the very last second when China finally decides to invade, because getting into a direct war with China, that's a whole other ball game. That's a lot more serious than going to war with Russia, just because China's a little bit more technologically advanced than Russia. So that's why they're holding back. Honestly, I can't blame them. But at the same time, though, hopefully in the background, we're sending the Taiwanese government some quiet statements of support to let them know that publicly we can't acknowledge it, but we can, at least behind the scenes, give them some type of security guarantee to basically let them know they're not going to be left alone. Because right now it's a little bit wishy-washy with everybody that's involved with it.
Um, let's see here, and I saw someone. There's always. I gotta say this, folks. I'm not really one for the political Kool-Aid stuff. I just said my stance on how weak foreign policy is in general, and someone had to say, well, the last president didn't stop weapons to Ukraine. No, actually, we were around. I just want to say this really quickly. We were around when the war in Ukraine started. You probably weren't. Like, you were probably not paying too much attention because it wasn't really that big of a political deal, and political people really don't pay attention to the fine details. But we were around back then, and I remember when Ukraine got invaded, everyone was on the last president's ass because he sat there and said, look, Jack, we're going to revisit this in like 3 months and see if they're alive then. And everyone was like, what? Like, we got to act now. I don't know. Maybe a lot of y'all will remember that. But it wasn't really like the United States entered in a really strong position in support of Ukraine at the beginning of the war 3.5 years ago. I was there to see that. And I remember looking at that and going, this is so weak. And then from then on, it was a trickle of support. And everyone was in agreement of that. This is a trickle. It should be a lot more. Not to say that the current administration's done any better, but to try and make it sound like the last administration was a saint when it came to Ukraine, be a little bit more realistic. I mean, it's not like I'm not one to sit here and toe party lines. I look at it for what it is, and I'm very disappointed with generally every single approach that any administration or any party has taken on this so far, because no one has the answer. Everyone's scared. No one wants to actually take strong, clear action, even if it's considered aggressive. No one wants to take it because there are people in America that no matter what, they're going to just diss on whoever's in charge and whatever the decision is. Like I can guarantee y'all right now, I know it's coming down the pipe. If the current president of the United States starts to support Ukraine heavily, not everyone, but some people who were in support of Ukraine prior are going to start saying that the president's going to create World War III in Ukraine just because he's the one now supporting Ukraine. That's just how it works in this country, and I'm not one of those people. Like, if supporting Ukraine is the right answer, it's the right answer no matter who's doing it. And if the right answer is to support Taiwan, that's the right answer. The last administration, like Matthew was saying, wouldn't even come out in open support of Taiwan. The current administration won't also do that either, and we are waffling on that. And honestly, the one thing that we keep saying here in America, at least during the current administration, is if we can get TSMC out, then it won't really be that important to protect Taiwan. And that's kind of the general message now being put out right now. So it's just wildly clear that no administration, prior or present, really is that adamant on defending Taiwan. And it's an unfortunate shame, because it's not just for TSMC that Taiwan is important. Taiwan is important because of the island containment chain. I'm not going to go into explain that. I've explained that until I went blue in the face so many times on air. But the island containment chain is a really important thing. I believe in the island containment chain completely. It will work well if we keep it intact. And if we lose the island of Taiwan, the entire island containment chain collapses. We don't have one anymore. We will never have one again. So the Chinese cannot take Taiwan because it's going to allow them to break out into the Pacific in the outbreak of a major conventional war, and that is going to be absolute doom for U.S. logistics in a major conflict like that. We may as well have already lost that upcoming war if we lose Taiwan. We would have to put so much money into the Navy. We would have to put so much money into anti-submarine abilities. It would be unreal to even have a chance of finding and destroying all of those Chinese submarines that would be breaking out in the Pacific if the Chinese took Taiwan and then started a major war with us later on in the future. It would be a very dangerous situation.
Although you gotta be careful though with Taiwan, because I understand the need to support Taiwan. Like, I'm in total favor of supporting Taiwan. If Taiwan gets invaded, I believe the USA should stand behind them strongly, provide them weaponry, and support their fight against China. But at the same time, though, our objective is not to agitate China. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to stall the situation as long as we can so we can stay prepared for it when it does finally happen. But to go out there and publicly say to China, if you go and invade Taiwan, we're going to be there ready to go and take you down, that's going to agitate the Chinese significantly. And the Chinese are on a level playing field with us. I'm not going to try to fool anybody on that. The Chinese are on par with us militarily. It's just the truth. I know some people are going to be like, well, not really, because they don't have this, they don't have that. In my opinion, they are a fair fight. Like, we're on a fair playing field with them, and we've got to be careful with that. We don't want to rush into a fight with China with them being on a level playing field and rush into it like there's no tomorrow. That's not wise. We should simply tell Taiwan in the back channels that we will come to their aid if they are attacked, but we're not going to make public statements of agitation toward China just for the hell of it. There's no productive need to do that.
Well, I would say that we just take a page out of the old playbook that we've been doing for decades now and tell the Taiwanese, look, go and talk to the Chinese about reunifying, but just never agree to anything. It pretty much keeps them in an endless cycle where they're talking, but nothing happens. That's what I'd say. And of course we tell them in the background that if anything does happen, we're going to be there involved in the war and their support, because we have a lot of strategic interests tied up with Taiwan right now. That's what I would do, because that's worked well for the past 80 years, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I think that would be the best approach that we could make. The Chinese can never force the Taiwanese hand, because then that would make them look aggressive, and then that gives everyone a justification to be against the Chinese. So they always have to take this really weird approach. If you ever look at how the diplomatic situation has ever worked with the Taiwanese, this is what the Chinese do. Hey, how would you like to do a one country, two systems model? Would you like to talk about that? And the Taiwanese go, sure, yeah, we would like to talk about it. And then they talk about it, and the Taiwanese go, I don't really know. I mean, like, I just don't know if the time's ripe right now. And then the Chinese government, they're forced to either say, we will kill all of you if you don't do this, which looks bad. Or they will sit there and say, okay, well, that's fine. We can talk about it again here in a little bit. And then in the background, they keep on trying to build up their military to get ready to invade Taiwan. But at the same time, the Taiwanese always stop them by going, well, let's talk about it again. And then they talk about it again, and they hash out a couple of details, maybe agree on some things, maybe disagree. And then they go, I don't know. Maybe we'll think about it again, and they just keep us going in a continuous loop, kind of like the Russians and the Iranians are trying to do with the U.S. government right now. On the flip side, that's what we do with the Chinese. It doesn't force us into a war early, and it doesn't provoke the Chinese into a conflict, but it makes sure that it's pretty much kept in an endless circular stasis to where nothing really happens. But the issue with that, though, is that we've done that, and we've done that so well that people keep on and like, this is something I've got to complain about, folks, with the Congress. Nobody ever wants to fund the Navy. Nobody wants to. Most of the ships in the Navy are well beyond their retirement age at this point, and there needs to be a massive refit and rebuilding of the Navy, and not only that, a rebuilding of the Navy to a size even larger than it is currently, with a lot more logistical vessels built into it to be able to support our long-range naval expeditions, like into East Asia, that we don't have right now. We just don't have them, because there's not enough money being put into the Navy. People have got to stop acting and pretending like the Air Force is the most important branch in the military. It's very important. I will not undermine that whatsoever. But the Navy is truly the most important branch that we have. America's trade is conducted by the world seas. 90% of the trade on this planet is done in the world's oceans. If that is not a reason to say that the Navy is one of the most important things America has to control world trade and world economics, as a result of the stranglehold that we would have on 90% of global trade, I don't know what would be. It is the most important branch for that reason, and nobody gives it any funding. Everyone just keeps on throwing money at the Air Force, like airstrikes are always the answer to everything. But sometimes the answer is having naval power projection. That's really one of the biggest answers that we need in the modern world, because with naval power projection, we can do anything anywhere. We can protect the United States while we built an army or we built an air force. We could protect the United States from our allies. We could well, not our allies, our enemies. Oh, whoopsie, I pulled a Bushism right there. We could protect the United States from our enemies. We could blockade them in port and pretty much starve them into submission and not even really have to get involved in a major ground conflict with them. The Navy is very important. People do not get that. I'm not even a person who's hugely interested in ships, just to be entirely honest. My thing is trains, like as far as vehicles go. But beyond the fact of my own personal preference, there is no denying that the Navy is the most important asset the United States has. And we need to ensure that the Navy remains to be the largest Navy on the planet. I would say that we should generally set the kind of rule that the British had at the earlier part of the last century, which is that the American Navy should be 2 times larger than the next adversary Navy on the planet. So if the Chinese have 480 ships, we have 940. If they have 200 ships, we have 400. That should generally be the running rule. And not only that, the Navy should be incredibly strong in logistical support. The Merchant Marine needs to be expanded, as well as the Navy's built-in logistical networks as well. It's a very important thing for our stance in the future, and it's a very important thing because all of the wars we're looking at right now are happening at the most fringe part of our supply lines, all the way out in the Eastern Pacific, the Western Pacific, or all the way out in the very farthest parts of Eastern Europe. The Navy is the lifeline. We have to have a Navy, and it has to be one of the strongest ones that's been seen on the planet so far to keep people in check right now. That's the clear answer. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, I understand that we actually have another poll here before we get on into our final question of the segment and then back into the news.
All right. So since we were talking about China, and I saw a lot of people saying, hell no, the Chinese aren't on par with the U.S. military, I had to run a poll on to see what the audience was really thinking according to the numbers. So the question says, is the Chinese military on a level playing field with the U.S. military? And about 63% of the audience said no, China is worse than the U.S. military, while 21% said yes, China is equal to the U.S. military, and only 8% said that the USA is worse than China's military. So, in my opinion, I am 100% of the belief that China is equal to the U.S. military. And here's why. The U.S. military has really good quality ships, but the Chinese, though, they have quantities of ships, and they have the ability to manufacture them pretty quickly, actually, a lot quicker than the United States. Also, when it comes to drones, the Americans have really, really good stealth, high-end drones, but on the Chinese side of things, they have quantities of drones. They have a ton of cheap drones that can overwhelm our defenses. So in China's own strategy, they do level out the playing field with their own way of doing things. I know people hate to hear that, but that's just the way it is in my opinion. I'm with the 22%. I think they're equal. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the Chinese are worse off than the United States in most ways that matter, because they can have a lot of drones, sure, but if the Navy is several hundred miles off the coast and they have no way to get a drone several hundred miles off of the coast, the Navy never has to worry about the drones. The Army would never have to worry about the drones because they will never be involved. It's mostly going to be a naval and air force affair. So you would have to find a way for the Chinese to get all of these drones hundreds of miles out, or the range to get hundreds of miles out, and also get the drop, which they won't be able to because the radars will pick them up on these warships from hundreds of miles away. So we'll see them coming a long time before they get there to be able to get the drop. So they really wouldn't be able to. And then as far as the Air Force goes with the United States, you would have to find a way to deal with that. And once again, that goes back to conventional surface-to-air missile batteries. So while drones are a huge threat, and we certainly need to start working away on the littoral level, which is the closer range combat sort of a level, to deal with drones, it's not as big as an issue as a lot of people would think. Honestly, one of the best things to do, this is going to be a little bit crazy to think of, but this is probably the reality of it. The best thing to do to deal with drone swarms is to return to the superiority of firepower idea that you would see on an Iowa-class battleship back in the day, or any of the heavy cruisers of the day in World War II. Let me show y'all really quickly the extent of the secondary weaponry loadout that an aircraft carrier would have had back in the day. Let's see here. Not really a lot of good pictures of the Iowa from then. Let's see here. We'll go with this. You can generally see all of the secondary weapons that they had. They had an endless amount of 40mm Bofors. They had a load of 20mm Orlikons. They had 5-inch guns. They had the whole gamut. Because generally, if you're dealing with that kind of a massive drones, you don't have to destroy them dozens of miles or hundreds of miles away with like an SM-3 or some sort of a crazy expensive weapon like that. Generally, you just have to carry around a massive amount of proximity-fused shrapnel shells, like you would have carried in an anti-aircraft role back in the day, and just fire those in mass into that crowd, and eventually they'll take down most, if not all, of the drones. It's not like they're fast-moving, and it's not like they're nimble. They're generally slow, and they're incredibly cheap, so just having any kind of a gun-based air defense system that's able to fire off clouds of shrapnel at something will be able to deal with the problem fairly easy. So if we're able to
I don't know. I think when it comes to drone defense, I think you're looking at laser weapons. It's probably being the future of defense when it comes to like large quantities of drones. I'm not really sure. I'm not a person who's like an engineer, but it seems like maybe a laser like wide beam that could probably hit a lot of drones at once would probably be the way to go about it, if that's even possible. Or maybe just a lot of laser turrets on one ship that has the ability to shoot down tons of drones at one time very quickly with one strong zap of power. It can take them down right out of the sky really quick.
Maybe the Navy needs to research that's actually probably a better idea. Maybe the Navy needs to research a new class of destroyer that specializes in laser-based systems only, that is able to accompany carrier strike groups as a specialized anti-drone defense vessel. So it can't operate on its own, but it can operate as a part of a fleet, and that one ship alone will have multiple laser systems on board that are able to engage several or dozens of drones at a time and take them out in SWATs. Maybe that would be a effective sort of a counter to this problem that we're seeing.
Yeah, maybe so. Or even better than that, probably a more effective way to deal with drones is if you can hit the drones before they even take off and disable them that way, that would be the best case scenario because the advantage to drones, especially little small ones that are in quantities, is once they deploy them from one origin point, they spread out and then they become very hard to hit because now they're way dispersed. They're in a wide field of area, so it's really hard to hit them all at once. So you have to spend a ton of resources trying to hit one individual drone at a time. If you could take them down at the source, like for example, send out a drone boat or something that could attack these launch points, that would be the ideal circumstance. But that would rely heavily on a lot of intelligence to locate these spots of launch. That would probably be the best case scenario, though, is to hit those targets before they even launch them in the first place. But that's wishful thinking. In reality, though, you would have to end up having some way to hit them at the ship level. So that way you could, obviously avoid the ship getting hit. But I don't know. The multiple drone thing, that's a challenge of the modern military that we've never had to face before. And that one, honestly, is a bit scary to me. Like the idea of a large quantity of drones coming after our naval assets, that is a horrifying thought because that's never been the way we fought war ever. And that's just a whole new one. That's a bit sketchy on that front.
I actually think the answer may be, because I saw some people throwing this in, and this is true for the moment. Lasers are still limited by fog, cloud cover, and a whole bunch of things that can greatly weaken the power of the lasers. It might actually just be an effective thing to have a ship specialized as a class, like a laser destroyer or something along those lines, that has a mix of laser systems on board, conventional flat guns, which are pretty much the 127mm deck guns. Let me go show those really quickly. These are the modern day flat gun. We actually do have these on destroyers still. Several of these, possibly not centerline on the vessel, but on the port and starboard sides. And then also have electronic warfare systems, some of the strongest types that you can built in, to try and deal with drones in any way, shape, or form. So that way this one ship, not a load of destroyers and cruisers firing off expensive missiles, but one singular specialized destroyer just focuses entirely on anti-drone defense and nothing else.
Yeah, it could be. I wonder if, like, for example, like a radiation weapon, because, I was just thinking about the targeting systems these little drones use. They use optical sensors like cameras, and they also use, I think, maybe LiDAR, if that's what they're using. I'm not really sure, maybe infrared or LiDAR or something like that. If there was like some radiation weapon that could literally be pointed in a wide swath, like maybe like a microwave weapon. I know we've experimented with that before in the US military to like for anti-crowd dispersal methods, but if they could like shoot like using like a large dish in the direction of these drones coming in, like a large microwave weapon and very high power, it seems like it could scramble it enough to take them right out of the sky.
Possibly. I think some electronic warfare weapons kind of do that very thing. I'm not exactly an expert on electronic warfare, though, so correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but I think some of them might be able to do that. So maybe we need some sort of some sort of a drone defense destroyer, a special class like that that focuses on this and is able to follow around carrier strike groups and larger fleets and pretty much protect them from any kind of drone threats that could pop up. Because one thing's clear, I mean, at least with the Russian Navy, they have been completely taken by storm by Ukrainian drones. There is practically no defense in the present day right now against drone swarms in the modern naval setting, because most ships these days are specialized around long-range missile-based combat, and that's it. Like, if anything gets in close in large amounts, they're completely overwhelmed, and there's just not enough of enough number of deck guns or flak cannons or any kind of laser-based systems that could protect a ship in the present day if somehow that many drones do get close enough. There's no way to defend against them. So probably an important thing to start focusing or researching on a specific class of vessel that can work on that sort of a deal. I bet you that someone in the Navy is already working on that right now, hopefully, because that seems like that might be an important thing, at least in this era of warfare. It'll probably become obsolete by the next, though, but still be important for right now. But with that, I hope we were able to address that well. Very interesting question, but I generally would still believe that the Chinese are behind us, at least in my opinion. But with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting into the rest of the news. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this one goes to Coleslaw. And also, by the way, Gunfox, we will be getting your super chats here very shortly during the last question segment when we have a chance to rabbit hole on the space shuttle information. So just to let you know, it is coming up. And also, he'll be watching this tomorrow because I think he already left for the night. But this one goes to Coleslaw, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Coleslaw, for that support. And they said, with China wanting to hide new tanks, do you think it'll be like the Russian Armada or maybe just some small modifications? And I believe events are just too hard to just build a brand new tank, then the Chinese aren't known for performance.
The Chinese have technically built new tanks like the ZTZ-99, which is their premier main battle tank in the present day, which is this one right here. But generally, I'm assuming that it will follow the same sort of Soviet principles that we've seen in the past. It certainly isn't probably going to be following any NATO conventions, because even after they have gotten far away from Soviet-style main battle tanks and they've started to produce their own, they still follow key Soviet design principles like the autoloader and ammo carousel that pretty much dictates that most main battle tanks of that kind of style or design end up having almost the same kind of style and form or function on the battlefield. So with that in mind, I think it's going to be following under one of those kinds of principles, but it may be some sort of a new armor configuration or maybe a new optical layout or something along those lines. So generally, pretty much like a refit or a modification of the current style and doctrine of tank design that they have in China at the moment. If it's anything different than that, I'm going to be really shocked. Like, for example, if it actually has blowout panels and a separated ammunition compartment that wouldn't threaten the lives of the crew if the vehicle was hit, that's going to be shocking because the Chinese don't really emphasize that in their designs like we do here in the West. That would be shocking if they did that, but I'm expecting that it'll be something similar in its design to that of Type 99 or something else along those lines. But with that, I do hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because it is folks like you, Coleslaw, who help to make this channel possible and help us to keep it running. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of our news, as we have been able to hear that the Greeks are now inspecting all of their vessels for bombs because of the explosions of the Russian shadow tank vessels at Ust-Luga and Novorossiysk. The Greeks, for some reason, are concerned, and they're now sending divers out to go and look at the hulls of ships to see if there's any bombs attached on board. Outside of that, we also were able to hear that the German Chancellor Merz stated today that the Germans will never surrender to the Russians. We'll just play the clip.
The one goes to Moscow and to President Putin. The message is quite simple. We will not give up.
Outside of that statement, we were able to hear that a Russian drone did land inside of Lithuania today, about a kilometer inside the border. According to information that we have, it's a Gerbera drone, very similar to that of the Garan 2, but shrunk down in size without an explosive warhead. But according to the Lithuanian State Border Guard Service, they reported that an aircraft resembling a homemade drone entered Lithuania from Belarusian territory. According to Delphi, the crash drone is believed to be a Russian unmanned aerial vehicle, which has been used by the Russians in its war against Ukraine for the past year. here. The Gerbera is a simplified and cheaper version of the Shahed 136 kamikaze drone. The Gerbera is capable of performing a variety of tasks, including reconnaissance, surveillance, strikes, and diverting air defense systems. This drone did land in Lithuania today, technically meaning this drone violated Lithuanian airspace, and also technically attacked the nation of Lithuania, but it doesn't appear there's been any significant response at the moment due to that incident. Outside of that, we were able to hear of drones making their way into the Moscow air defense perimeter, and we also were able to hear that, funnily enough, today, an Aeroflot flight flying into Moscow actually came under fire from a Pantsir S-1 air defense system in the air defense perimeter and suffered minor damage as a result. But it appears that clip just shows the aircraft on Flight Radar 24, but we were able to confirm that the aircraft did take some damage. We also were able to see the drones entering the Moscow air defense perimeter, which is what led to the Pantsir S-1 having a happy trigger finger of a sort. Moving on from that, we also have a second clip as well, showing that right here.
The Russian was happy they got one drone shot down out of like hundreds.
Yeah, I would say, man, someone was firing off a literal flat gun at the end, man. Did you hear that when
Yeah.
I was like, damn. I was like, are they pulling out like the old 100mm flat cannons? I was like, that's crazy. Meanwhile, we also got to hear that there was a fire in Penza, Russia. This is the first time we've ever heard of a fire in Penza. Apparently, it was a substation and transformers that were on fire. It knocked out power throughout the city of Penza. This appears to be some sort of a coordinated partisan action, because we also heard of something like this in Veliki Novgorod just yesterday. Ah, yes. Wake up and smell the toxic fumes.
Wake up and smell the bankruptcy.
The Russians really are smelling that in the central government right now. We need to confiscate everyone's personal assets. It's like, I don't know if that's the answer to bankruptcy on a governmental level.
Wake up and smell the oligarchy.
Man, that thing's cooking swell.
This is the bread and circuses for Russia's context, is fires at their electrical substations. They don't have football.
No, they do not. They do not have any of that. We also got to see a Dodge Ram launching a Shahed today, or a Giron 2 specifically, but an American truck.
Oh, drip or drown. Honestly, that's actually sick looking right there. But how the hell they get their hands on a Dodge TRX? I don't have no idea. I will say though, it's a cool looking truck. I'm not a huge fan of Dodge Ram, but that looks like a nice truck. Nice engine too, Hellcat engine. But it doesn't get good gas mileage either. So with them having a bit of a gas shortage, not a wise choice. But it does look cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool looking. I won't lie, but still a little bit interesting that they were able to get their hands on one. We also were able to hear of a drone attack in Kursk as well, which we were able to see in these clips. There's a shooting down of one of the drones. Here's another clip showing air defense fire around Kursk. The popcorn is popping. I see in that clip, and moving on from that, we also got another clip of the air defense fire as well. And we also got another clip.
A little ratatouille.
Ratatouille.
This woman's acting like she's in The Shining or something. It's like speaking low isn't going to make it dodgy or something.
Bro, she's sitting there like, they're coming, they're going to get us. Like she's got to be quiet, or the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are going to get them. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see the Russians getting attacked once again. And then this clip, you can hear the sound of the drones. Oh!
He got some.
Oh! Sounds like a shulka, possibly.
These Russians must be from Iraq, the way they bagged that ass up. Damn.
God. But anyways, that's the end of those clips, but still very impressive to see. Meanwhile, near the Kursk border, we also get to see that some Colombian volunteers have joined the Magura.
You said from Colombia?
Yeah, they're from Colombia.
Oh wow, that's a long way away to come over here to fight in Ukraine. I don't know what brought them here.
They went from fighting El Chapo to fighting the Russian army. Very impressive stuff.
That's a lot of them too.
Yeah, a lot of them. But moving on from that, now to that little bit of news, we also got the air defense report out of Kyiv. We were able to hear that the Russians fired 415 drones and missiles overnight, and 164 Shaheds were shot down, 6 X-101s were shot down, along with 8 Iskander-Ms. We also understand that 200 additional drones were taken down through electronic warfare measures, meaning that the interception rate was actually incredibly high overnight, but a decent amount of them still made it through. Outside of that, and in our location unknowns, we also got to see the Russians towing behind them a North Korean MLRS. That's what that sounded like.
I see.
Every song tries to be so so groundbreaking these days, and honestly they become ironic, but we can actually see them towing this MLRS with some sort of a drone.
Oh, that is cool. That was a cool little track drone right there. It reminded me of like a bobcat.
Kind of remind me of Wall-E. You see them prepping the rockets for the MLRS. This was, by the way, provided by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. I gotta be honest with you folks, I absolutely hate modern music, and anytime I hear a second of modern music, my day is ruined. It's ruined, truly.
I don't like that modern music that sounds like just moaning on it. It's like they added like a synthesizer to some moaning sound. Just like, not my thing.
Also, I also don't like how every single modern song, everyone acts like they have to embellish every single word. Like in the Star Spangled Banner, instead of being like, "Oh, say, can you see?" They'll be like, "Oh, say, can you see?" You know, it's like, no, it's terrible. It's like, please stop. Like, I hate that. But anyways, moving on from that and on to our next clip, we also get to see a Ukrainian-made drone that is literally made up of anti-tank mines. Like, the wheels are anti-tank mines. So this thing rolls onto position and the wheels explode, and it's 3 of them. It's 3 anti-tank mines on one vehicle. So this thing is carrying some firepower with it. Like, no joke.
Could you imagine them taking this into the service department being like, excuse me, I need my wheels rotated and balanced, bleed. Oh, okay. It's like, we'll rotate and balance it. Thank you.
Man, honestly, I don't know if anyone will want to rotate or balance this thing. I think rotating and balancing this thing might be an explosive outcome right there. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little bizarre kind of a drone, but still, I bet it's effective. I hope to see a video of that thing being used one day. Outside of that, we also got to see this air defense setup, which is absolutely freaking baller. It's 2 Maxim guns mounted onto a stand. And they just kind of cart this thing around, and whenever they see a drone, they light it up with Maxim guns. It's pretty sick, honestly. Man, I like it.
This looks like an album cover or something, like Ivan the Beat Returns 2 or something like that.
Dude, this is something that you would see on like a SoundCloud cover of like a song that's like Skibbity Riz, and then this is like the cover. It's something goofy, but still, this pick goes hard. Like, this pick goes absolutely hard. Outside of that, we also got the Russian casualty reports as well, and the Russian casualty reports were pretty baller. But beyond that, we were able to hear that Misty Secure the record stated that 324 drones is a new record high. Daily loss was, prior to that was the record, was 306 on the 5th of July of this year. Both are a result of 2 massive attacks in Ukraine, and troop losses did drop below 1,000, and the tanks have finally risen to double digits for the first time in an incredibly long time. Outside of that, we were able to hear that 920 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 3 APCs, 81 supply trucks, 11 main battle tanks, 38 artillery pieces, 324 drones, 3 MLRSs, 6 cruise missiles, and that was it. But still, a very impressive amount, and it is great to see that the Ukrainians are continuing to defend their front lines. Outside of that, though, Matthew's asked you all a question about that Lithuanian drone. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we did see today that a Russian military drone from Belarus crashed in Lithuania about 1 kilometer into Lithuanian airspace today, causing panic and chaos, and all their leaders had to scramble to bunkers. So, what was it all about? What is your take on this incident? So, 52% said Russia was testing Lithuanian defenses by sending in that drone as a probe, while 30% said that Belarus accidentally lost control of that drone and just happened to go into their space, and 9% said it seems like a false flag attempt. And I would say rule out a false flag, in my opinion. Probably zero chance of that, at least in my humble opinion. But I would say this was most likely a probe of the Lithuanian defenses. This was a decoy drone. It was not armed with a warhead, so it was not an attack necessarily with like a drone that was armed with a bunch of munitions on board. But it was an attack, though, because NATO airspace was violated. So we've gotten to a point in history at this point where NATO's airspace can be violated, and it's generally not considered a bad thing. It's just considered like, oh, it's just another day in the office. But I think that's a bad way to get. It's getting complacent, and we shouldn't be like that. But it's sort of turned out that way anyway. But Russia was trying to test the responses of Lithuania, in my opinion, and they got the response. They saw the leaders scramble to the bunkers. They saw the fighter jets get ready to go. They got to see all that firsthand as a result of that drone going in. So I'm with the 53%. I think they were testing it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be with the 53% as well. They were testing it for all of the aforementioned reasons. And so I hope we were able to address that well. And moving on from that and on into the Lehman area, we also got to see Ukrainian combat as the Ukrainian GUR was attacking Russian positions near to the area. And we're going to be muting that. Sorry, by the way, that I had to rush through that poll to everyone because I just realized that it's actually an hour and 50 minutes into the news. We still have more to go. And I was like, dang, we've got to make sure to keep this thing rolling because we're actually falling behind tonight already. And we've hardly even talked. Like, we've hardly even analyzed a rabbit hole or anything like that, and we're a good bit behind. But we can see here the Ukrainians hitting the Russians with their drones and then moving the infantry on in. Oh, and that's actually a really pretty field right there. And we can see them moving through the trees. We see them moving up to the Russian positions. There's a burned out truck right there. We see a Russian that's surrendering. We see another Russian that's surrendering. They blurred them out for privacy reasons, as we all know. And someone said you did a rabbit hole. That is true. That is true. It was an unexpected rabbit hole, but it was one that was welcome, nevertheless, I hope. But moving on from that clip and Lehman and down towards the Touretsk area, we also did get to see the Ukrainians hitting some more Russian forces, including this absolutely whacked out T-72. I've never seen a house made like this before, but we won't ever see one like it again. It got hit and burned to the ground. They got like some Brillo pads on the top, some spaghetti hair on the sides, and then a shed structure underneath.
It is ugly.
Man, that thing be hideous.
Man, it is so ugly. It's a one.
It is so terrible that we are going to send it back to hell, which is where it came from. And they're about to hit it and send it right back. But that's the end of that clip. And moving on from that and on into our next one, we also got to see the Russians getting hit by the 36th. Is that a wheelbarrow, Blade? You know what?
Oh yeah, it's like one of those like things they use at the airport, like to like tow around the planes or something.
Yeah, it kind of is. But, for time reasons, if you know what I mean, Matthew, we're going to let y'all just watch this one on y'all's own time. So if you want to watch it, make sure to click on the link in the description below, and y'all can go and check it out for yourselves. I don't think we'll be able to show that one on stream, though, due to time constraints, if y'all get what I mean. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Nevertheless, we did get to see them also hitting Russian forces in the Wormbusters unit. Oh, the cease and desist attorneys. They really don't like that one. Oh, and the video paused right there. No, cease and desist attorneys, please don't get us. But we can see here the Russians having parked one of their crappy UAZs near to the tree line with an artillery piece behind it, are about to be taught a quick lesson by the Wormbusters. The Wormbusters are about to bust their worm, and we can see them flying in and busting that worm. Look at that.
Pause.
Ryan and his men were up on their tiny post, and they were getting pounded. I
don't know if y'all heard it recently, but Will Smith was in an interview with like the streamer fella, and he was talking about bussing. He said they used to be bussing on each other and stuff like that.
Oh,
I don't
God.
know. That's kind of along the same theme, what you were saying there for a
Man,
second.
and they would always be busting on me, and I just couldn't get a right angle, and I was like, bro, hold up. Like, I'm like, bro,
Wait,
yo,
pause,
wait a
pause,
minute.
pause.
Is this a joke, or like, are you talking about jokes or something else, Will? What are you talking about here? But we can see here the truck did catch on fire and burn, and it was quite nice. Splendid stuff. But moving on from that clip and on further down the line and into our last piece of news coming out of the entire world today, we also get to see the Ukrainians hitting Russian forces with airstrikes in the Zaporizhia front. You know, Will Smith really fell off hard after that whole keep my wife's name out of your mouth thing. You know, like he's not really had a good time since then, at least with public image.
He shouldn't have slapped Chris Rock like that. Like that was just crazy.
Yeah, that was really messed up. You know, it's like all for a woman that ended up divorced him in the end. It's like you know, you could already kind of see that coming by that point. And they are absolutely clearing him out. Oh, and Miss Deesa said he's got money though. Yeah, but I don't really think money is like a good thing to detract from what Will Smith's kind of turned into recently. This is kind of like saying that Mel Gibson's got money, but you know, yeah, like you know, you gotta look at Mel Gibson or that other guy. Who's that guy, Matthew? That rock star guy who's like really big into
That rock star guy.
yeah, he's like a rock star guy who's like really big into the political stuff these days, but it's clearly like a grift, you know, like all of them. Like that doesn't really like kind of narrow it down anymore. Everyone's into politics for the grift of it. No one believes in what they say, but I can't think of the guy's name. But the
I don't
guy
know, but
always
I just like the fact that Will Smith kind of acknowledged that he kind of like messed everything up. He put out a rap song, some really terrible sounding rap song, and he had like in the lyrics in the rap song, he said, I pulled the pin out of the grenade when I threw it, when I blew it, or something like that. It's like, huh, well, at least he's like, I guess he's taking accountability, I guess. Everybody's saying Kid Rock.
no,
I
no,
don't know
it's
anything
not.
about Kid Rock.
It's not Kid Rock. It's some other guy. He's like some British dude. And like for some reason, like every British person who ends up being a celebrity that lives in America, they want to act like they understand America in and out, and talk about it from that level. And this guy does that, and I'm always like, why the hell is he doing that?
I
Because
wish I
like,
knew who you were talking about. Like, are you talking about Bono?
no, I'm not talking about him. It's some other dude. Like I wish I just knew who it was because, like, the guy's an absolute whack job, right? Like, he gets really heavy into the political side of stuff. And then recently I saw that he was selling, like, some crystals that can reset your aura. And I was like, okay, this dude's, like, legitimately crazy.
Russell
Um,
Brand?
yeah, that guy right
Or he's
there.
not a rock star, I don't think. I think he's like a comedian or an actor or something.
Hold up. Let me pull him up, though. Let me pull him. So so he's a comedian and an actor. Okay, I thought he was a musician. Look at it, folks. I don't know a lot
That's
about
why it
this.
wasn't ringing, man. I was like, what? I was like, no. And also, I think he mainly is a YouTuber, man. No, he's like, I think he fell off a long time ago, man. It's not new. That's been happening.
Dude, he's whack, man. You know, I just got to say this, folks. I've gone to Britain a couple of times, and I really like Britain. Like, it's a cool country and everything. But I would never have the goal of going over to Britain as an American and then live there and then tell the British what they're doing wrong. Like, I just don't think that's the place. That's my place because I'm not a Briton. I wasn't born or raised there. I didn't really live there. So generally, I'm more so a guest in their country than anything. So I don't really have a right to tell them how to run their show, as far as their country goes. But I also have the same feeling for people like British people who come over here and then they live over here and they weren't born here, they weren't raised here, they don't really know the culture in and out like a natural born American would, but then they want to speak on it like they do. And that's one of those guys because he got really political recently. And regardless whether I agree or disagree with anything that he says, I'm just generally not a fan of someone doing that. It's kind of like how, like, I'll just also say this, like how Piers Morgan comes to America and he speaks on American topics. I'm like, I don't really think he gets it. This is like, you know, I'm not going to get British politics in and out. Like, I'm just going to say that. Like, I can tell you what it is and what they're talking about right now and the two different sides to it. But as a British person, or as a non-British person, I don't have the kind of, like, British perspective that a British person would have that was born and raised in Britain to really give a good answer or an actual, like a culturally based answer, at least from a British mindset. I couldn't. And that's something that I kind of don't like whenever like foreigners weigh in on other countries. Kind of like how, when Elon went to Germany and he was campaigning for that one party over there, it's like, should he even be doing that? I mean, is he even a German? Does he even know what German politics are about? Because I sure as hell don't like it when Germans or anyone else comes to America and does that. I'm like, I don't like that at all. Or like, when an election comes up and they say, Putin said this and Xi said that and Orban said this and, whoever's the prime minister of Britain said that. I'm like, I don't really care. That's kind of like my perspective on that whole sort of a thing. But anyways, with that, folks, I do have to say that it is time for us to move on into the question segment, because we've actually rounded out the news. We've actually rounded out the news, folks. So it's time for us to get to chit chat with each and every one of y'all. And we do not have a speech from Zelensky tonight, folks. Unfortunately, Zelensky has not been making speeches for several days. He's been busy on external affairs outside of Ukraine, so he's not been able to make presidential addresses. So we do not have one to show y'all tonight. And so with that, I hope that does round out our news segment the best we can. But with that, it is time for us to move on into this second segment. But before we do that, I do understand that we have another question that we've asked all of y'all. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so the tides of war have changed a little bit against Russia's favor because now the U.S. president seems to be publicly going against Putin, calling him full of bullshit, and also saying that he's going to approve some aid packages for the first time since his term began. And he said he's going to do that very, very soon. It could be as soon as Monday of next week. So the question is, will it actually happen, or is it just talk? 64% said yes, new packages are imminent from the U.S. president, and 18% said let's give it a few more weeks. 10% said no, the U.S. will stop short of it. And I believe new packages are imminent, but I would say give it about 2 more weeks, and we should see the package being passed. But to give you like some real information about this, there's currently about $3 billion roughly the president has under the presidential drawdown authority that he can call on to send more aid to Ukraine. He's saying, and at least claiming, that the first package that he's going to approve is going to be $300 million worth of aid, and that aid is going to be sold to NATO countries, and then those NATO countries are going to send it into Ukraine. And he's also saying that NATO countries will pay 100% of the cost of the equipment that the U.S. is sending over. So technically, it shouldn't cost the taxpayer in the U.S. a dime, according to his plan. So that's what he's saying, but give it 2 more weeks. Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that packages should be imminent. Once again, wait 2 weeks. So yeah, I'm not even going to answer that anymore. I'm not even going to talk to that part anymore. Give it 2 more weeks, folks. Come on, folks. It's unrealistic to think that we have to have an answer to an ongoing situation right now. I mean, give it 2 weeks, another 2 weeks on top of the 9 other 2 weeks that we've given. But outside of that, new packages should be imminent. Also, I don't know why we have this focus on saying that it shouldn't cost the American taxpayer any extra cent. Because where was I just got to say, folks, it makes no sense with this stuff sometimes, because where was that when the new spending bill was passed in the Congress that is larger than any other spending bill in history? Where was that concern that it wasn't going to be a burden to the taxpayer then? Why in the world is that, is it only considered, the consideration of the burden to the taxpayer only considered here and there? Why isn't it considered across the board or not at all? Why in the world is there no consistency anymore in anything from anyone? It's not just a situation with that. It's a situation with everything for the past 3.5 years that we've been covering news. Why the hell is that the case? I don't know, because we didn't care when we passed the new spending bill, but now we care when we're providing support for Ukraine that it doesn't cost the American taxpayer any extra cent. That just makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. It's like if we were all for cutting down the burden to the taxpayer, why did we pass the largest spending bill in history recently? It's like,
something else that doesn't make any sense either is the U.S. had said we need to reevaluate how much aid we're sending to Ukraine because our stockpiles are so low. We got to be careful because our stockpiles are getting so low. So then Germany said, well, we'll pay you to get the Patriots and send them to Ukraine. All of a sudden, the U.S. said, oh, actually, we just found some new Patriots. I forgot we had some Patriots in the back room back here, and we can actually sell those to NATO countries, and then you can send them to Ukraine. I forgot. We're good to go. We can sell those to Germany now, and they can go to Ukraine. So, what was really the issue the whole time? Was it really about the stocks being low, or was it about the money? That's the thing now. I think it's pretty obvious what the problem was. It was about holding out for money, basically. And while I understand that we should be, not having to foot the entire bill for Ukraine. It's back to that thing about being disingenuous. We don't want to be like that on everything, or nobody's going to trust us. Not even our allies are going to trust us.
And also, of course, someone's like, if you have only negatives about the big bill, I don't give a shit about what was in the bill. What I'm talking about right now, and this is what political people can't get through their heads, is that there is a disparity on the baseline statement of we're trying to cut down the burden on the taxpayer. If we're trying to cut down the burden on the taxpayer, the amount of money being expended everywhere would decrease. So let's get our political Kool-Aidified brains around that for the people who might find that to be an issue. It's not about what was in the bill. That's not at all what I'm bringing up right now. The issue is the big thing is we're trying to save money. The national debt, according to the statement, is spiraling out of control. We have to cut it down, and we have to cut down the burden on the taxpayer, which really isn't a burden for the taxpayer. They just pay their taxes every year. It's really more so a burden for the government to balance its books. That's really what the burden is. But we say that on one hand, and we make sure that not a dime will be spent on Ukraine. If we're giving anything to Ukraine, it's literally free, pretty much on our end. We're not spending a cent. But then when it comes to passing a bill like that, we go, okay, now we can just make this the biggest bill in history and massively increase the national debt. And that burden to the taxpayer is fine. But a minuscule burden to the taxpayer and giving maybe 20 billion or so to Ukraine every year, that's too much. We have to make sure that we balance that to where we're not spending a dime on that, but we can add about $1 trillion in the bill. Like that just doesn't make any sense when you look at that. We can add $1 trillion here as a burden, but we can't add 20 billion as a burden. Or better yet, like here's another one that I got to ask. So if giving 20 to 30 billion to Ukraine is a burden, why in the world is it not a burden to give 20 or 30 billion to Israel? Like that's my question. Why in the world is that just unquestionably like, oh yeah, of course we have to give 30 billion to Israel. I mean, we just have to do that when they could easily fare it on their own like the Ukrainians could by that logic. Like, it doesn't really make too much sense to me. Like, I'm all for supporting all of them at the same time, but I don't know what it is with the lack of consistency, because back in the last administration, just to make this clear, as an equal critique, back then it was, oh, Ukraine has to be supported against the Russians. They have to be. But Israel being supported against anything? I don't know about that. Like, where was the consistency? Enemies of the Republic are enemies of the Republic wherever they are in the world. And our allies are our allies wherever they are in the world. Why in the world do we always act like, depending on which administration and which one has a certain kind of preference for which ally where, that we end up going, okay, this one's important, but this one could be thrown to the curb because reasons. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all if y'all see what I'm saying here.
That's the part that really kind of pisses me off a little bit is, and once again, I support all of our allies equally, but I don't support unequal treatment of certain allies over other ones. I get the fact that some conflicts are more important than others. Here's what I would argue. The conflict in Ukraine is more important than the conflict in the Middle East right now. That's just my personal opinion. I support Israel, but at the same time, though, I'd like to prioritize things that matter a little bit more right now. If Ukraine gets taken over and Ukraine loses this war, then Russia is going to have no buffer between NATO at that point, and they're going to be free to go start invading Baltic states if they want to, along with Belarus. So it's prudent to stop Russia, very prudent right now. That seems to be the top of the priority list. But yet at the same time, though, we are super hesitant about sending more weapons to Ukraine without getting paid back completely. But yet, at the exact same time, in the last 4 months, the U.S. activated emergency powers to expedite $4 billion in military assistance to Israel, while at the same time, we're struggling just to get a $300 million package passed by the president to go to Ukraine. And even with that $300 million package, it's still iffy because we need to have the NATO allies pay for it. I mean, it's really ridiculous. That's not even political. That's just common sense. Why are we fighting Ukraine aid so badly, but yet we let the money free flow to Israel like there's no problem at all, no tomorrow at all when it comes to Israel?
The Israelis already have, for their own selves, about a $27 billion annual military budget. We give them another $25 billion on top of that every year for their military. The U.S., quite literally, as far as we are concerned, is subsidizing half of the Israeli military budget annually, which is, and there's no question about it, and I personally don't find an issue with it, but where I find the issue that lies in that is that, okay, that's fine with Israel, let's apply that to our other allies in critical areas of the world, like Ukraine and Taiwan. Whoa, hold up, Jack, we can't do that. That's too expensive now. $30 billion to Israel is not expensive because, we favor the Israelis right now under the current administration, but if we give that kind of money to Ukraine, we're going to go broke. We can spend trillions of dollars a year on everything else. You know, we could spend trillions on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the military. We could spend $1 trillion on the military just domestically every year. We could, and then when it comes down to anything that actually, like, in my opinion, is starting to matter a good bit outside of those things which are important, like supporting the Ukrainians, supporting public transportation projects and things to improve the benefit of society here at home and also to benefit our strategic situation abroad. Then people go, and it's not even inconsistently, oh, we can't do that because now we're running out of money. Although it's never the issue that we're running out of money with anything else. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And the whole statement, folks, that people make in the government every single time about, oh, we don't really have enough money. It's such a BS sort of a thing because they find the money when they want to, and then they pretend like we don't have it in other instances. Like we were saying not too long ago, oh, the national debt's spiraling out of control. We have to cut government spending. We have to shrink the government and the costs of running the government. And then right after that, we passed the biggest spending bill ever in U.S. history. So it shows that there's not a lack of money there, or at least a concern about the lack of money. But then when it comes to something like Ukraine, or in the last administration when it came to helping out Israel, oh, I don't know. We might not have enough money for that one. In the last administration,
and also, Enforcer, one other thing, I see people pointing this out in the live chat. They're saying, well, Israel lobbies the U.S. government a hell of a lot more than Ukraine. That's why they're getting more aid. That's not entirely true either. Like, there's a massive Israeli lobby. Like, I'm no stranger to it. I'm fully aware of the fact of how large that lobby is. It's one of the biggest lobbies. In fact, it is the biggest foreign lobby that operates in the United States. But at the same time, though, Ukraine lobbies extremely heavily. Like, they lobby a hell of a lot here in the United States as well, because they're all about trying to get more aid for their country, and that's basically their lifeline. So obviously they're lobbying like crazy to get more aid, but yet at the same time, it's not making as much of a difference for Ukraine as it is for Israel. It's just not the same thing, because Ukraine's still fighting tooth and nail to get any little scrap of aid, while aid is free flows to Israel, like I said, like no tomorrow.
yeah, it's just, and then Taiwan isn't even mentioned. Like Taiwan gets a trickle. Like it was a big thing that they just got HIMARS recently. It's like that just, it blows my mind because like Taiwan is also one of the most important points in the world. Really, out of the three, Ukraine is the first most important because it's an active conflict right now. Taiwan is second because it's soon to evolve into an active conflict. And then third is Israel, because while it is an active conflict, Israel's got it clearly in hand as the situation exists right now. So what would be the point of going, okay, let's reprioritize things? Israel is number one by far, and Taiwan and Ukraine are tied for third. Like, it makes no sense at all. And it didn't make any sense in the last administration that it was like this. Okay, Ukraine is number one, and Israel and Taiwan are fighting for third. It just makes no sense. Shouldn't they all be fighting for first place in terms of support? That's what I think the answer should be, because they're all incredibly important areas of the world, at least for a strategic interest. So why in the world do we always say it's like, oh, we don't really have the money whenever we need to get to this? It's like, do y'all know how little 20 or 30 billion dollars is in material support to each of these countries annually on a governmental spending level? We spend about $7 trillion per year at the federal level. 7 trillion. 20 billion's nothing. Like 20 billion's a lot to you and me, but for the federal government, that is nothing. They could piss away 20 billion on quite literally nothing. So is it giving 20 to 30 billion to each of these countries, which would equate to about 60 billion a year, or at the largest amount, 90 billion a year, is nothing. It's nothing at all. It hardly even exists or registers as a fraction in total government spending annually. But for some reason, when it's brought up, oh, God forbid, we don't have enough money, we have to weirdly pick who we want to support and not support this go around. And then when the next administration comes in from the next party, they'll also pick this weird sort of rigmarole where they'll support one group and then not the other. And then some of our foreign policy situations are in peril, and then some or others are just fine, but they're all equally important. It's just a senseless sort of a situation.
Did you know that Israel every single year until the year 2028, Israel just gets like almost $4 billion from the United States just for the hell of it? Like they just get $4 billion a year in military aid automatically under a memorandum of understanding. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And then on top of that, they usually get more than that. Like recently,
Oh
The
yeah.
total number of military aid in billions that we give in the manual is like $25 billion annually. No questions asked, by the way. Like, that is just something that's understood to be the case. They spend
Yeah.
25 to 27 billion on their military in Israel, and then we give them another 25 billion on top of it. No questions asked. The Israelis, Netanyahu isn't having to come over here to the White House and go, please, Mr. President, give me some money. There are people killing my countrymen. Like, there's none of that. It's just, oh, here you go. Here's some bombs. The Taiwanese, they have to literally crawl through broken glass and then get beat with whips for us to give them a couple of HIMARS and maybe a few Abrams. And then the Ukrainians, they hardly get anything. Like, it's like, it's a miracle that they're even getting 300 million, which in a military sense is nothing. And it just
And
doesn't make any
and
sense.
also since October of 2023, and also I want to make this clear right off the bat, I'm not making these points about the funding we're giving to Israel to say that we should stop funding Israel. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I want to make that perfectly clear right off the bat. I'm simply making the argument that if we can send so much money to Israel, and Israel is not even at the top of the priority list right now, then how come we're fighting tooth and nail to get stuff sent to Ukraine and we can't get that done? That's the point I'm trying to make here. But since October of 2023, the U.S. has approved around $18 billion in emergency military aid specifically for operations by Israel in Gaza. That's just for Gaza. You know how big Gaza is? It's barely anything. That place is small. $18 billion just for that since the 2023 October in that year. That is crazy. Like, that is wild. And to consider the fact, $300 million barely can get that under the PDA passed for Ukraine. Barely. Like, it's insane to think about.
And it's nuts. It really is nuts. And I see some people. I don't know what some people. That money needs to come back to America. Talking about Ukraine support, but when it comes to the Israelis, Israel is our eternal ally. But for some reason, the Ukrainians are only a passing ship in the night, and the Taiwanese are as well. Although they're all in major flashpoints of global strategic influence and strategic importance that we have to protect our interests, for some reason, Taiwan and Ukraine are passing ships in the night. But Israel, which is in the same situation as Ukraine and Taiwan, they are a hardened ally. Like, the money is justified. But for the Ukrainians and the Taiwanese, which the money would also be equally justified to give them, and then I don't know, like, I don't know if we can do that, and it doesn't make any sense. But what I'm saying, because I also want to make this clear, like Matthew's saying, I'm not saying that the money should be cut to Israel. We get a good bang for our buck out of the money we give to them. They bomb people left and right, and they do it pretty much for us, as far as our interests are concerned in the region. But the thing is that we can't have a double standard where the Israelis are, just special. They just get money without question. And then the other countries, Ukraine and Taiwan, which are also very important, they're equally important in their own areas as Israel is in the Middle East, they get nothing, or they have to fight for something. That makes no sense. They should all be getting an equal amount of support right now because they're all equally important. It's a ridiculous sort of a thing that we find ourselves in these days. And then, like, what's interesting is that right now, this is the current running metric, is that the Israelis are number one, and the Ukrainians and Taiwanese are fighting for third. But in the last administration, which was under a different political party and a different leadership, the Israelis were fighting with Taiwan for third place for the large part because the U.S. would hardly ever go in and support the Israelis for anything. But then Ukraine was kind of first, although not even really, because that was a really weak sort of a stance in foreign policy, and the support even then was largely at a trickle. It's like, it makes no sense why that's being done so inconsistently. Like, when you look at that, standing back from the goofy partisan politics of it, that, oh, the Ukrainians are good people and the Israelis are doing bad things, like, stepping back from that, or the other way around, it just doesn't make any sense. What is going on here? It doesn't at all.
They're turning geopolitical decision making into such a cesspool because they're turning it so partisan. Like, every single issue geopolitically has become such a highly partisan issue every single time. Like, it's insane. Like, there's always been politics involved in the geopolitical world. It's just the nature of it, but it's getting so much worse. Like, the last group that was in there, they hated Israel. They didn't want Israel to get anything, which is short-sighted as hell because Israel is our conduit in the Middle East. That's how we enact our foreign policy in that region, is through Israel. Israel's like an extension of the United States in the Middle East. That's the way it works, and it's a good relationship between the two countries in that respect. But at the same time, though, then we get a new political party in, and they hate Ukraine. Why do they hate Ukraine? Hell if I know. I have no idea why. They love Vladimir Putin, who's a dictator who wants to take all of our rights away. Makes no sense at all. I don't understand it. I never will. I think it's personally cultish, because it doesn't even use logic behind it. There's no logic. And it's not a jab at one political party or another. That's just for both of them. That's for all of the parties. They all do that. If one party's stupid on one thing, like Ukraine, the other party's stupid on Israel. They're stupid on another one. They should stop making these things so partisan. Just so the politicians can win an election, they start screwing with everything that we're doing geopolitically. That is so bad for the long-term longevity of our country. It's terrible. They should back off of that. And if they're going to make a partisan issue out of something, make it on something domestic. Don't make it on something worldwide, because these are real enemies. Like, China's a real enemy, Russia's a real enemy, Iran's a real enemy, and we're going to start playing political games over our potential future as a country. That is so stupid. It's so unwise, and it's reckless.
Also, I see someone trying to say, well, if you understand Zionism, then that's why you won't like the Israelis. I got to give you something that's a little bit of a hot take. It's going to be a little bit crazy for people to get here in America in the modern day. I don't really give a shit about what the Israeli internal political situation looks like. And I really don't care what the internal Ukrainian situation looks like, or really any of the situations for allies, because you know what's crazy is that I'm not one of their citizens. Why do I care about Israeli or Jewish nationalism in Israel? Why do I care about the corruption that might be going on in the Ukrainian police or judicial systems? Why would I care about the corruption in the South Korean government, or the Japanese government, or the Taiwanese government, or the British government, or the German government? I'm not a citizen of those countries. The way I look at it as an American is that whatever the hell they're doing in those countries is their issue for their people, not mine. All I'm caring about is what kind of a position does our alliance or friendship, if you want to call that, with them, puts the United States in. That's what I care about. I don't give a shit that the Israelis believe in Zionism. I don't really give a damn that there's corruption in Ukraine. And I don't really care that Yoon Suk Yeol just tried to overthrow the South Korean government and it looks like there's a decent amount of rife corruption in South Korea, or if there's a decent amount of rife corruption in Taiwan, which there is. I don't give a damn. Because the real fact of the matter is that outside of that slightly corrupt island nation right there in the Western Pacific is a giant death machine that is running camps. They're running a communist society, and they're a direct affront and a threat to the United States. That's really the bigger issue of the two. I don't really give a damn what Merz might be doing in Germany, or Macron in France, or Starmer, or whoever the hell the prime minister is from month to month in the UK, because I'm not a citizen of those countries. It doesn't matter to me. And as far as foreign policy and global strategic situations are concerned, that never mattered. Like, I don't know if y'all know this, but back in the day, there were quite many scruples that people could have had in the modern day about the government of South Korea and Taiwan. I don't know if y'all know this, but they were straight up dictatorships up until the 80s. And we supported them full on. I don't know if y'all know this either, but in Vietnam, the South Vietnamese were not a democracy. It was a military dictatorship, a junta, a straight up dictatorship. And we didn't give a damn, because all we cared is that country will help us in our fights against our greater enemies, the communists, either the communist Chinese or the Soviets. We don't care what the inside governmental situation looks like. I'm not there to get along with them. I'll be friends with them if they want to be. If they're nice people, I'm more than happy to be friends with them, talk to them. But the thing is that Americans get a little bit too caught up in the stupid kind of back and forth about these stupid ideas of, I don't really like their internal situation. Like, I don't really like Starmer or Merz or Macron. Who gives a damn? Who gives a damn, really? Like, if we're making money off of trade with their country, and we are also getting some sort of a military advantage by being allies with them, why do we care what the internal governmental situation looks like? Isn't that more for their own citizens to deal with in the elections that they have? Like, if they don't like Starmer, they can just vote for the Tories and get him out. If they don't like Merz, they can vote for another party in Germany and get him out. That's their problem, not my problem as an American. That's the truth.
Most people wouldn't care. The average American wouldn't give a crap who's in charge of the UK or who's in charge of Germany. They're told to care by the politicians. And that's when it starts getting hairy really quickly, because then Americans who had no say in this country, like for example, the UK whatsoever, then all of a sudden they feel like obligated to jump in and start having a say in their politics, because the American politicians told them, that was what they should do. And it's like, no, we shouldn't do that. But the U.S. politicians are doing that because they know they can use that as a leverage in their own political campaign to get reelected. That's why they're doing that. And then that starts messing up public opinion when it comes to geopolitics, because the American now has gotten invested in a foreign government system, now they overlook the geopolitical benefits of having that country as an ally, and they start looking at the domestic issues in that country, which messes up their perspective completely. And then they start looking at it like, well, if I don't like that country, then we should just get rid of that country and not be allies with them. It's goofy. Because, like you're saying, it's transactional. We're allies with countries. And I know people think, oh, well, we're actually friends and stuff like that. I would love to be friends with Europe, and I hope we remain friends with Europe. But at the core of the relationship, it's transactional. We're allies because it's beneficial to the United States. It's beneficial to Europe to make sure that we have a unified security, which is NATO, to defend against these really rogue countries like Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China. We have a benefit from that. Like the enforcer said, if we can be friends at the same time, that's great too. I'd love to be friends with the Europeans, and we are friends with them. Hopefully it stays that way. But it's transactional. We can't start getting all personal about it because it's business. Like they used to say, it is just purely business. And when people start tying up their personal feelings about it, then it starts getting hairy. Then you have a situation like we have in the modern day, which ends up going haywire real quick.
Yeah, it's such a goofy sort of a position. And also I just saw someone, this is one, oh my God, I get so tired of this. I'm going to address this really quickly. People keep on saying, this is one thing I always hear about the British. Like, I'll be like, oh, America will make a coalition to deal with the Houthis, and we can get the British involved, the Israelis, the Saudis, and the official Yemeni government. And then someone will say something like, Britain's been infiltrated. Britain stand or something. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Like I just got to be honest about that. I don't care. Like, if you're a British person, that's a problem for you to be concerned about. Go vote in your elections however you feel. But on my level, I don't give a damn. Like I'm going to sit there and go, yeah, it'd be nice to have some British bodies in this fight and also British military equipment and bombs. It would really help us out with the superiority of firepower deal and kind of take a little bit of the load off America's backs. But because of their immigration laws and how they're dealing with immigration, I'm not going to bring them in on a coalition. That's such a stupid mindset. I don't even know how in the world to work with that, because it's like, who gives a crap? If we can work together to solve a common issue, why do I care what the problems are in the UK? I don't. I really don't. Even outside of that, why would I care? I don't live in Britain. I'm not a British citizen. What is the point of me caring? Why do so many Americans care about that stuff? It's the same kind of thing.
You can care. I mean, there's nothing wrong with caring if people choose to do that, but we can't go as far as to start caring so much that you become personally invested in their domestic political issues, because it's not our prerogative. Just like, for example, I've never liked it when some Ukrainians feel the need to start getting interjected in our domestic U.S. politics. I don't like that, because I'm like, first of all, you're not an American, so you don't have a say here. That's number one. If you were an American citizen, you would have a say here. So that's big deal right there. I'm sure the Ukrainians wouldn't want us interjecting ourselves as Americans in their domestic politics. If they want to keep Zelensky, great, keep Zelensky. If they want to get rid of Zelensky, that's up to the Ukrainians. I may have my opinion on it, but I'm not going to be able to interject myself to the point of actually being able to change something. Because if they start doing that, then that's, in my opinion, that's meddling. And if we do that on their country, that's meddling as well, and we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous because a lot of Americans talk about, oh, there's foreign interference from the communist Chinese and the Russians and everyone else. And it's so stupid because people like it and they don't like it depending on who it's for. Like, if it's for your party, oh, Orban said this and Orban's a great man and y'all should listen. It's like, shouldn't we all be for, everyone minding their own business? Outside of their countries. I don't have an opinion on British politics. I like Britain. I like British culture. I think it's a cool country. I'm never going to speak in your internal political situation. I'm not a British person. I don't have a right to speak about it. Much like British people don't have a right to speak about the internal American situation. It's not their country. It's my country. We speak about it here. We fix our problems, or we come up with our own answers, and we vote how we vote. But the more important thing to understand outside of that is that stay in your own lane in your own country and figure out what's going on inside your own country. But outside of that, you just need to understand you have friends out there in the world. Doesn't really matter how they're running things back in their own backyard. Just trade with them, make money, be in a military alliance together that can beat the hell out of anyone else that threatens all of y'all combined. And that's really the run of the situation. That's what it is. You don't have to get more complicated than that ever. That's just how it is. I do thank everyone for from being around the world for being here, but at the same time, I don't really have a right to weigh in on y'all's domestic political situation because I'm not from your country, and I don't know why everyone else acts like they have a right to weigh in on the political situation of our allies, or anything else along that matter, because you'll find a million things wrong with every single country in the world, even all of your allies, if you do that. But it will be endless. There's an endless amount of issues that I know here in the United States. Many of our allies could end up saying are deal breakers and just walk away from the United States over. Same with them, but we're not there for that. It's pointless. You're not a part of their country. They're not a part of yours. Just leave it for what it is. Agree that you're friends. You make money off of your trade. You make a great military alliance that's strong and protects you from your enemies, your combined enemies, and leave it for what it is and be happy with what we have. That's the truth of it. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into some more questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So, Marion Deemer, before you leave for the night, because I saw they said night, friends, we do have your super chat we're about to read off right now. And Marion Deemer put in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support once again. And Marion said, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, and you guys rock.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Marion Deemer. And Slava Ukraine, Slava. And thank you for saying that we rock. We thank you massively for support. And thank you for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Coleslaw, who puts in another 20. And thank you very much, Coleslaw, for that support. They said the drone strike on NATO, I feel, was a test to see what we would do in that type of situation. And if it would happen again, what should the response be?
I would say that the response on those sorts of things, if it's not a drone with an explosive on board, we should just generally file some sort of a diplomatic protest off of the bat and then work from there. Because we're having to play with the cards we're dealing with now, and considering that we pretty much ignored all of the other times that this happened, we have to start at square one and start with a diplomatic protest. And then if it happens again, we work from there, and then we start going up the escalation ladder to wherever that will end. But I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. But whenever a situation like this pops up and we've never had a reaction before, always start at square one and then work up from there. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next ones here are the super chats from Gunfox, and he puts in a $20 donation 5 times. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's $100 right there. Quick math. And Gunfox said in his first one here, and also, by the way, he has some history for us about the NASA Space Shuttle program here, and it's very interesting information every single time he gives it. So here's the first one. He said STS-26 was the 26th NASA Space Shuttle mission and the 7th flight of the orbiter Discovery, and the mission launched from Kennedy Space Center, Florida on September 29th, 1988, and returned to flight after STS-51L. And take a question from the chat.
And I gotta say, thank you for the support, Gunfox. And here is actually the internal bay of the space shuttle, which was releasing a tracking and data relay satellite. That's actually a really cool looking satellite, by the way. That thing looks cool as hell in this picture right here. But let's take a gander. Oh, there was the launch of the shuttle. I've got to admit, the shuttle has a kind of presence about it that no other spacecraft has. Like, it was just such a cool thing. I hate that they had to discontinue the program because of cost inefficiency, but it was one cool craft when it was actually operational. But I do thank you for sharing that with us, Gunfox, and we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor.
All right, so the one from the chat is going to go to Aussie Maddie, who said, did you cover the dead spy shooting in Kyiv? Now, we did see, I'm not sure if we covered that here in the stream, but I did see earlier that there was an assassination on an SBU officer, I believe, in Kyiv. And we did see that on a video. It appeared to be some guy jumped out of maybe a bush or a spot that was sort of hidden, and they took the guy out right there as he was trying to go back to his car. So I did see that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I did see that as well. It's just that I didn't cover it because I thought Matthew had actually covered it in his video earlier today. So I was like, that sounds kind of redundant. And there wasn't really a lot more beyond it, rather than it was a colonel that got shot and killed. So I hope that addresses that well. I thank you once again, Gunfox, for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next. Also, of course, Matthew, I saw some people coming out. It's always a litmus test, folks, whenever we talk about anything, because people always take it as political. And it's so funny, because what I'm saying, what we were saying about keeping outside of others' affairs and just keeping them as allies and making it a transactional relationship like it's always been. Of course, people want to come in and say, "Oh, you're really isolationist or you're really liberal," and it's like I don't know if people know this. It's like this is what's been happening recently. In the last administration, which was left-leaning, they would go around the world and kind of lobby the left-leaning governments in other countries to try and help them win, or they would try and support them, which I wasn't really a big fan of. Now the right-leaning government in America goes around the world and tries to campaign and support right-leaning governments in other countries, which I'm also not a big fan of. It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with the principle of the matter, which is that the United States shouldn't be getting involved in other countries' internal political affairs, and other foreign countries should not be getting involved in our internal political affairs, and that's as simply put as it is. It doesn't matter whether you're left-leaning or right-leaning, that's just the basic answer to the equation. If you somehow turn that into the enforcer is gone ultra far right or ultra far left, I don't know how the hell you can do that. You've drank the Kool-Aid so badly, you're lost in the sauce. Like, you can't even see the sense behind it. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I just want to say this because someone was saying, why are you saying the Ukrainians shouldn't have a say in U.S. domestic politics? No country has a right to interfere in U.S. domestic politics. It's not a right. They can register as a foreign lobby. Now, they do have a right to register as a lobby, but that's highly regulated, and they have to follow certain exact rules when they do that. Now, there may be some lapses in the rules here and there, but technically, according to the laws in the books, it's very regulated. So a country can't just willy-nilly come in and start trying to interfere in domestic politics. It's highly regulated. So to say that Ukraine should just be able to come in here and start doing whatever they want and influence our country however they want, that's never been allowed, ever. They can do it under a certain circumstance, but they just can't come in and do it on their own accord without any regulation. But anyways, jumping on from that and jumping into our next super chat here, this one also goes to Gunfox, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Gunfox, again. For that support. Well, I'll joke. But Gunfox said STS-27 was the 27th NASA Space Shuttle mission and the third flight of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, launching on December 2nd, 1988, and the STS-27 carried a classified payload for the U.S. Department of Defense and the second flight after STS-51L.
That's really interesting. And I thank you for support and sharing that with us. And I got to say, every time they took a picture of the space shuttle, it went hard. Look at that. That is pretty cool. And so I got to say, the big thanks to you once again for support and sharing that with us, Gunfox61, about STS-27, because you are our Space Facts guy. And so a big thanks to you so much for that. And with that, we're going to be getting on to the next one that you sent in.
And he also said the STS-29 was the 28th NASA Space Shuttle mission, during which the Space Shuttle Discovery inserted a tracking and data relay satellite into Earth orbit, and the mission was technically designated the STS-29R.
That is really cool. I like seeing them deploying the satellites. They're really neat. But still, thank you for the support. Help the channel to keep running once again, Gunfox, and sharing another day in space history with us and another space shuttle mission. And with that, we are going to be on to the next one after this.
And also, someone said I was laughing. No, I was actually coughing. I was actually choking. That was not a laugh. I was not laughing at something, by the way. I was actually choking. Like, for some reason, I don't know why at random. Like, these days, like, I'm not sure if it's because I'm talking a lot or something. My voice just tends to, like, get hoarse just out of the blue. It'll happen for, like, maybe, like, 5 minutes, and then it kind of goes away. I think some water helps it along the way. I guess I'm getting parched. That could be part of it. But anyways, Gunfox's next super chat. He said the TS-30 was the 29th NASA Space Shuttle mission and the fourth mission for Space Shuttle Atlantis. And Atlantis deployed the Venus-bound Magellan probe into orbit and the first shuttle mission with a female astronaut on board.
Oh, that's pretty cool, actually. And also, this is a really... I gotta say, the satellites always look incredibly cool. Like, they are some of the coolest things. But I thank you for sharing that information with us once again, Gunfox, about STS-30. And I gotta say that it's a very interesting thing to hear that this was actually the Magellan probe that was going to be sent to Venus on this mission. Really neat stuff. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last super chat from Gunfox in the space history category, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of our questions for the night.
And his last one here, he said STS-28 was the 30th NASA Space Shuttle mission and the fourth shuttle mission dedicated to the United States Department of Defense purposes and the eighth flight of the Space Shuttle Columbia, landing almost at a tail strike.
And let's see here, the landing almost had a tail strike. Kind of, actually. Let's see, at least in this picture, we can't really tell it too well. Let's see. because of software glitch with the weight on wheels sensors installed in the landing gear, the crew was instructed to touch down on the runway as softly as possible. This instruction resulted in a touchdown airspeed of 154 knots, which is 177 miles per hour, which, by the way, folks, is not normal landing speed. Normal landing speeds are around, I believe, for a large amount of aircraft, around 130 to 140 knots. So this was a little bit above normal. The slowest of the entire space shuttle program by a wide margin, and barely above the orbiter's stall speed. That's actually pretty cool, actually. But still, I do thank you so much for the support and sharing that very interesting space history with us about the space shuttle program and some of the STS missions that the space shuttle was a part of. And a big thanks to you once again for support, Gunfox, the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
You know, I have a fun fact too, to try to outdo Gunfox a little bit. Do you know the Chinese have a drone, one of their premier drones called the Wing Long?
Yeah, I actually do. The Wing Long. Here we go.
There it is. Look at that, the Wing Long.
Wing
Wing
Long.
Loong.
the Wing
That Wing
Loong.
Loong.
But it's called the Wing Long here in the West. It's literally like everyone has their Reaper and Predator ripoffs. Every single one of them does.
Yeah, one thing you can't fault the Chinese for is they do, like, they're naming their stuff accurate. Like, those are long wings, Wing Loong.
It's just how it works, man. You know what we ought to name our stuff in America, man, is like when we make a 2,000-pound bomb, call it Big Bomb, and then in parentheses Israel edition. Like, you know, something like that. Like we ought to name them how we're supposed to be naming them. But anyways,
we gotta put that Costco guy on the side. You know, whenever we like have to go bomb Iran again, say 5 big booms, boom, 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 boom.
Oh man,
and just start smacking Isfahan and smacking Fordo. I tell you what, they put 5 big booms on Isfahan. They've never seen booms like that. They were booming so hard they got tired of booming.
No, man, like you'd sit there and have that video of him sitting there like, oh man, I'm so sorry that your brother died. He gets 5 big booms. But change it to, oh man, I'm so sorry that your supreme leader died. He gets 5 big booms. Boom! Like, you know, like start doing that. That would be ridiculous. But still, with that, I hope that addresses that well. But yeah, you know, Matthew, we ought to do that next time. Better yet, Matthew, you know what we ought to do? We ought to do some psychological warfare and parachute drop like the largest loudspeaker and stereo system that we can over Tehran and sync it properly, so that way the speaker starts playing, "We're Costco guys. Of course we drop bombs on your Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei." and then he gets 5 big booms, and then you just hear in the distance the bunker busters, the mops just hitting the bunker he's in. It's like the 5 big booms. It's like, bro, we got to do that. That would be something that would scare all of our enemies permanently. Is that they'd be like, man, not only did they get him, they turned it into a joke.
We're gonna drop the JBLs on Tehran. It's going down. Like I tell you what, they're gonna have the building shaking after that. We're gonna blast that music on a level 10 on the JBL. I'll tell you what.
Man, I'm telling you, it's going to be real. But with that, I hope we addressed that well. A big thanks to you once again for support, helping this channel and keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Plant Lord, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much, Plant Lord, as well for that support. They said the ships that have sunk, that have been sunk, will that affect the shipping in terms of wreckage, blocking travel of other ships?
I believe the Red Sea is actually fairly deep within the area, so it shouldn't, because the keel of most vessels only goes about 30 feet into the water, or 40 feet, and considering that those vessels are going to be several hundred feet under the water, it won't really pose that much of a navigational challenge or risk. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. Really good question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to MRO Laughlin, who puts in a 10. They said these big bombs couldn't have destroyed elemental uranium. They could have only splattered both enriched and unenriched uranium into the cavern walls. I think you technically are correct. I'm not sure, is there like a flash point or a melting point of uranium? Like, what do we have that? Like, do we have that data on hand?
Technically there isn't.
There's not.
Yeah, there isn't actually. You can hit it with anything, and you just end up scattering like the particulates of it around. So that's kind of how it works. That's also why Fallout's radioactive is it's actually taking those uranium atoms that make up that uranium, and it's just carrying them off after the reaction off into the distance, and then they're dropping down elsewhere, and that's what creates radioactive fallout. So generally there isn't a way to destroy uranium, but if you spread it out over the walls where it hits the wall so hard that it's pretty much caked or kind of like painting the walls almost, there's really not a way to recover that successfully, because there's going to be concrete elements inside of it now because it's going to be attached to the concrete to some extent. So it would be really difficult to clean it back up and technically enrich it, in a sense, to get it back up to that weapons grade uranium. So the real answer is it's pretty much destroyed. That's kind of the metric that we're working off of there, is that it pretty much was destroyed. It's going to be really difficult to access. It's really going to be difficult to recover it at this point. But that's generally how it works. That's why when earlier someone threw in a super chat and they were like, "Oh, technically it's not destroyed." It's like, it really is though, for all intents and purposes, because, unless if the Iranians want to go in there with a trowel or a spade and start trying to pry it off the walls, this is pretty much baked into the walls from the explosive force at this point. It's going to be pretty hard to recover that and find something to be usable out of it. So that's generally the issue with it. But yeah, technically there is no way to destroy uranium, but there's also not really a way to destroy most of really anything else. Like, say for example, you wanted to say, let's destroy let me see, what would be another thing that could be destroyed. Let's destroy this fuel, like this oil at this fuel depot at Ingalls. The fuel technically isn't destroyed, it just burns, it combusts, it turns into some separate elements in the process of its combustion, and then it enters the atmosphere and spreads out. Because it's just generally the law of working with any material or anything that's physical, is that technically there's no way to really destroy it. You just end up kind of just spreading it or dispersing it if you catch it on fire or hit it or anything like that. So that's kind of how it works. But with uranium, it's more so the case because it's a specific atomic element. So it's only made up of uranium atoms for the large part, and then some byproducts, because it's only 90% enriched. So there's still some stuff left inside of it. But if you spread that stuff out and it's kicking the walls, or it's ended up getting buried into the wall somehow from the explosive force, if you try and recover it, there's going to be a lot of impurities in it at that point, and you're going to have to go through the process of re-enriching all of that to get it back up to where it's just pure uranium mass for the large part. That's kind of how that will work. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from my understanding, Levon. And if I'm wrong, anyone can correct me, but that's generally how it's understood, because if that was the case, then no intelligence source in the world would have said that any of it was destroyed, and no one would have even been working with that as a metric in the first place, because they would say technically it's impossible to destroy uranium. And then we would have worked around the mission that way, instead of saying that there is a way to destroy it, because the Israelis went in and said, we're going to destroy their uranium, and then they didn't really do that, but they destroyed a decent amount of nuclear facilities. And then the U.S. went in and said, we're going to destroy the uranium, and if there was no way, in a sense, to render the uranium unusable, everyone wouldn't have been working off of the premise that it was destructible, including the IAEA, whose entire job is nuclear science. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and I thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who put in a $10 donation. And tonight we have Jenna. We don't have Holden. So Jenna said, tell you one from the chat, got to run and have fun, fellas. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. And we shall grab one from the chat. And in honor of Jenna's super chat, this one is going to go to Nicholas, who said, can Ukraine reclaim their territory, and what would they need to make that happen?
Ukraine can reclaim their territory, but it would be really tough. It would require a lot of air support. It would really require air supremacy in Ukraine at this point. So they would have to build an air force from the ground up, have such a robust air defense system that their air force can never be targeted and destroyed while it's on the ground. And they would also have to have an insane amount of anti-radiation missiles and a lot of air-to-ground ordnance, along with a much larger and more competent, well-trained army than they have currently to be able to regain their territory. So in a practical sense, they really can't do it. But in a fanciful sense, that we were able to provide them with all that, and they were able to find the manpower somewhere to be able to pull that off, they could take it back. But it would take a lot. It would be a mountainous effort to be able to do that. So it's a lot easier at this point just to destroy the Russian economy, funnily enough. That's an easier thing to do than trying to just retake the land by force. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And I thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does answer that well. And thank you very much for sponsoring that live chat, Jenna, last name Tolls. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Timothy Hill, who puts in a 10. And Timothy said Nixon and Kissinger were greedy for choosing the CCP for cheap labor. The world is weak for treating Taiwan as they do, and Taiwan needs a 2A. And I believe China is weak and they act tough just because of the nukes.
I think it would support Timothy Hill, but the Nixon wasn't really concerned about the cheap labor side of things with the Chinese. It was more so an enemy of our enemy is our friend kind of a thing, kind of like we did with the Soviet Union in World War II, because communist countries don't get along with each other a lot. That's something that's very misunderstood, even back then and in the present days, that communist countries did not like each other. China and the Soviet Union hated each other, and were almost going to war by the time Nixon went to China in the mid-70s. So it wasn't greed. Like as a matter of fact, we didn't even really have a trade relation with the communist Chinese until the late 90s. Until then, we really had nothing to do with them trade-wise. It didn't exist. Our relationship with them was entirely strategic, because if we were friends with the Chinese, then they were friends with us. And if we're both friends, we're both enemies of the Soviets. So it's generally changing the balance of power to where on the strategic military level, the Soviets are on their own. There's no friends of theirs anywhere in the world, even in terms of communist countries. Outside of the Warsaw Pact, there were no allies of the Soviet Union. So that was generally what we did it for. And you can see that in Kissinger and Nixon's explanations of their trip to China, and also the general standpoint at that moment, because there was no understanding that China was even a trading power at that moment. China was impoverished. China had no industrial base. They had just gotten done and failed with the Great Leap Forward not that long before Nixon arrived, which ended up killing 40 million Chinese citizens in an attempt to industrialize, and it failed. So that was generally the standpoint. It was leaderships of further administrations, generally the Clinton and Bush administrations in the late 90s and early 2000s, that actually brought China into the World Trade Organization and allowed for them to gain access to a large amount of, I guess you could say, foreign money lending that would allow for them to build up their industrial base and liberalize their communistic economic structure into a limited capitalist structure, and then actually lead to the Chinese economic growth we see today. That's generally the reason why China is who they are right now. It's not because of Nixon, it's generally because of Clinton and Bush, if you wanted to point a finger at anyone. And also, I'm not doing that just to be fair by saying it was Clinton a Democrat and Bush a Republican. It quite truly was the two of them. It was a foreign policy initiative that generally was agreed upon at the time between Clinton, well, not really Clinton, but the Democrats and the Republicans, that further expanding some form of economic relationship with the communist Chinese would actually be beneficial on a economic standpoint, which looking back at it, it wasn't. But back then it seemed like a decent idea because they didn't seem to be that openly hostile, and there had also been a great deal of liberalization, not just in the Chinese economy, but in the Chinese government, that made things look like it was generally a bright future for the Chinese. That would end up biting us in the ass once Xi became the leader of China in 2012. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next super chat here. This one's going to go to JB, actually, who put in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, JB, for that support. They said China has already burrowed deep in the USA, and it could get us from the inside. And they own a pretty well-known supplier of pork products. And what should the U.S. government do to get this under control?
You generally just pass a congressional act to seize all Chinese holdings in the United States. That would result in a significant amount of backlash from the Chinese in terms of tariffs and other deals. But you could just do that, and that fixes the problem immediately. So that would be.
No, we should. Like China doesn't let any Americans own like a stake or a major stake in their companies. Like I'm not aware of that if they do.
Yeah, they don't actually, and it's like we shouldn't really be allowing that. But also, we have to weigh out the economic fallout of doing something like that. And generally, I think a travel ban would probably be the best thing that we could do. So Chinese citizens who are here have to leave, and no further ones can come in. That'd probably be the best approach that we could take, because then the Chinese-owned land has to be handled or operated by American citizens, or at least its management has to be done that way. So just a travel ban, which is a lot less damning than seizure of Chinese assets or Chinese owned assets in America, would probably be the better approach. It's a lighter one, so the response would be smaller. But if we ever wanted to just get rid of that influence, it's not some sort of a complicated process. We just, by act of Congress, confiscate their assets here in the United States, much like we did with Russian financial assets at the beginning of the war. We just froze all of those and then went through the process of liquidation by congressional order. And so that I hope that does address that the best I can. I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to the Potato Eater, who puts in a 10. He said, truly my favorite news source. It's not much, but keep doing the Lord's work, you guys, and y'all are keeping us informed. And also, thank you very much, the Potato Eater, for that support. And something I've been saying at the end of our videos recently is because some people think they have to donate like big bucks or something to the channel to support our channel. It's actually the smaller donations, like the $5 donations and things like that, that is really like the real backbone of the channel, because it's all those supports that add up to be able to allow us to do this as a full-time job on a regular basis. So that support means a lot to us. Even the $5 support, even less than that, it still means a lot. So thank you very much for that. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support, the Potato Eater. And I gotta say, that's really kind words as well. And it doesn't take a lot to support this channel. And on top of that, I also have to say that every bit of support is greatly appreciated. It doesn't matter if it's $500 or $1 or anything in between. We are happy for any of it. That is huge support, because we know that everyone supports as much as they can. So if you can support $10, but someone else can support 500, it's really the thought that counts that goes behind it that means a lot to us. So a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, let's see, I saw someone say something. Oh, let's see. Someone said both political parties are just the same. Adam McLean said that. Kind of to an extent. Speaking about that for a moment, considering that we've kind of been on that topic in an apolitical way tonight, they are similar to many degrees. And a lot of people don't see it, because a lot of people get tied up on the whole reality television side of politics, which revolves around really... Like, they revolve around issues that don't really affect a lot of American citizens on a daily basis, but they really gain headlines. So gun control, abortion stuff, things like that are really polarizing. That's what most of the reality TV side of politics revolves around, that keeps people really heavily involved. But once you get beyond that level, which is a very surface level sort of a part of politics, and you actually get into the details of how these parties function, they are very similar beyond that, and a lot of people don't know that. Like, the radicals on both sides almost agree on everything. Like, it's crazy to see. Like, the radical communists and the radical Nazis, pretty much, if you want to call them that, on the far right or the far left, they're almost identical. If you listen to their talking points, the means are different, but the ends are identical. And then also a lot of the middle ground sort of a stuff in the middle for the left and the right, it's very similar as well. You don't really find a lot of a big difference in between them, and that's also why I don't know why a lot of people hang their hats up on the stuff. Like, for example, with one of the ones that was really interesting recently, there was this whole thing about releasing a list of a thing that happened on an island, and just to let y'all know, me and Matthew generally knew that was never going to be coming out, because we were like, to be entirely honest, there's going to be a lot of names on that list, and a lot of them aren't going to be great. So it's not going to come out. It never would. And one party says, oh, well, we're not going to put it out. And they're the ones that are the scapegoats for the moment. Everyone's going to dash on them. But then the next party comes in, and then they also do the same thing. And then everyone starts going, wait a minute, I thought they said they were going to release it. I thought the Attorney General said that they had the list right in front of them, and they watched all the videos, and now they're saying none of it exists. And then it's like, well, it was going to be that sort of a result anyways. Like, anyone who thought any different, they were they're easily fooled. Like, it's just the way things are. Like, for example, no U.S. government that's currently in power right now, like, just to say this to y'all, whether it be Republican or Democrat, is going to cut on government spending. Because cutting on government spending means that they're cutting on government programs for y'all. And a lot of people are really short-sighted. So while a lot of people would like for the government to spend less, that also means that if they spend less, you're getting less benefits. And if you're getting less benefits from the government, you're going to get angry. And then if you get angry, you're not going to vote for that party. So there's no way in hell anyone's going to cut down the government spending, because you're going to be pissed off at them. It's going to cost them an election. Even if you wanted it, you're going to be pissed off once you get it, because that's usually how most people in this country work. They're very short-sighted. So that's how that would work. That's why no one's ever going to cut down the government spending. And then another thing with foreign policy, if the foreign policy position was weak under the Democrats, it's going to be weak under the Republicans because there's hardly a change. Like, if you go back and look in the early 2000s, the Republicans and the Democrats were hardline aggressive on anything going on in the world, especially in the Middle East. All of them would go in there and go, oh, the war should end. And then as soon as they became in power, they were out for blood out there. That was how it worked. And that's how it always will work. If the foreign policy position is weak under the current president, you can guarantee that if they change the party leadership that's in the presidency and the Congress, it'll be the same under them. There isn't really much of a change. And that's something that's why I stay very detached from being involved or heavily invested in domestic political politics, because once you realize that if you're heavily supporting and just blindly supporting any kind of a political affiliation in the modern political atmosphere, you are nothing more than a token voter for that political group to stay in power and for those people to get paid a check. And that isn't something that I'm around for. I'm not someone's free meal ticket through my vote. My vote actually means something, and I vote based off of who I think actually might be able to do something. So, that's generally how it is. And then a lot of people will blame the political system and go, oh, democracy has failed. It's not democracy that's failed. It's the voter that failed. And a lot of people don't want to say that either, especially a lot of people in politics. They always want to tell you that the system's failed because they never want to throw blame on the voters that might vote for them. But the truth is, folks, is that democracy fails because the voter fails, because the voter becomes too stupid. The voter becomes too complacent. The voter becomes too lazy. It's those kinds of issues. If voters actually wielded their votes like a weapon of employment or unemployment, the government would vastly improve overnight. And no one uses their votes that way anymore. It is a damning issue. It's going to be one that might end up leading to the death of the country. It's not the democracy itself that's poisoned or weak. It's the voters that have been poisoned and weakened. That's what the reality is. The voters have got to wise up and think with their brains. And thinking with your brains doesn't mean that you become more entrenched in being a Republican or a Democrat. Thinking with a brain means that you pretty much become an independent outside of election seasons, and then going into an election season, you actually decide if someone is better than the other, regardless whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. Someone who votes straight red or blue ticket every election is a clown. Like that, I'll just be honest. Your vote means nothing to nobody. Like if you just do that, you don't think, you don't research. That party is expecting you to vote that way. You're not doing anything to bring change to the system. You are the reason why the system is messed up, is because you just keep voting the same way every election. You have to vote by doing a great deal of research and actually thinking and actually looking at who's in the government. And an outsider does not mean that it's going to get better. And just because someone's an insider doesn't mean it's going to stay the same. Teddy Roosevelt was an insider, and he did a great deal of good. Eisenhower was generally an outsider as far as the situation with being a politician or a career politician. He did quite a deal of good. And you have one there that's generally an outsider to the political system, one that was an insider in the political system. Both of them were able to render a great deal of good. And then there's others that render a great deal of bad. But it's up to the voters to hold these people accountable through their votes. If you do not do that, you are the reason why democracy is becoming a weaker system. It's not the system's fault, it's your fault.
Also, I got a question for people real quick. Everybody's talking about the list. Me personally, I would love to see the list, me personally, but I know that we're never going to see it. That's just the bottom line of it. Like, if you're hoping to see it, you might as well let that hope go by the wayside. You're never going to see it. But number two, for the people asking who's on the list, the problem is, what if everybody's on the list? When I say everybody, I mean a lot of powerful people. What if everybody's on the list? What do you do then? That's a practical question. If you have virtually everybody in the government on the list, what does the United States do at that point? Do you wipe, or do you take all those people and impeach them out of government? Do you do that? Who do you replace them with? How does that work? And now you have an entire government full of people that are now no longer eligible to serve. It could cause some real bad problems. I'm not saying that we shouldn't get the list or that we shouldn't do something about it and hold these people accountable. But at the same time, though, I'm not sure if people understand that if these people have done these horrific things and they have to get impeached out of government, then where does that leave the United States? And seriously, where does it leave us?
Yeah, and also there's another thing to consider, is that some of the people who may have the power to release the list might also be on it, and that also is the reason why it keeps getting buried. That's kind of also a reality of it.
And also,
Because
why would you campaign on that? Like, I mean, just from a logical standpoint, because I don't think there was ever any intention. This is not political party specific. There was never any intention for anybody to ever release that list. There was never an intention to do that. So why campaign on such a thing like that, knowing that you weren't going to do it and knowing the backlash that was going to come from it after the fact, after you backed off of it? Like, I don't understand that.
yeah, but also I see some people. I see a lot of people putting in their, their opinions, hold them accountable. Like, here's the issue though: holding them accountable. Let's say that everyone in the office of the president, the Supreme Court, and the Congress was on that list. Those are the highest levels of all three branches of the government. There's no one above them to hold them accountable. Who holds them accountable at that point? There's no one. Like, the answer is no one. There's no one because they're all on the list. They're like, they're all going to volunteer to go to prison? They're not. So then what are you going to do? You're going to have to vote them out. Like that would be the only answer. You'd have to vote them all out in the next election. And then a lot of people wouldn't do that because a lot of people are then going to be saying, "Oh, well, here's what would happen is that people would say, look, you have to vote, McConnell, like I'm not saying those are people on the list, but let's say hypothetically, you have to vote out these named people that have a lot of support behind them. Let's say you had to vote them out. Oh, I can't do that because those are actually good people. I mean, maybe they didn't do that kind of stuff at the island, and on top of that, we can't let the other party have an advantage. I mean, what if we vote our people out, a couple of them, and replace them with the other party, and then they get an advantage? We can't have this. That's what would start to happen because it's reprehensible until it starts to threaten people's political positions. Then people start to make excuses, kind of like how supporting Ukraine up until recently was considered a heinous thing because it's keeping the killing going, and now we're starting a congressional drawdown for $300 million to keep the killing going because there's no other option. It's kind of that sort of a deal.
Yeah, another problem as well. Another problem is I see people bringing this up, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories around the list. Like, there's a hell of a lot. Like, the conspiracy theories that run around that whole situation is off the charts. Crazy conspiracies, and some of them are rooted in reality, and some of them are just like out there, like bonkers world or something like that. But the problem is though, if you have individuals that have committed felonies, and they've committed felonies on camera, and they were recorded for the intent of blackmailing them and holding them basically against their will later to influence their decision making. And now we have a situation where the list can't be released because a large portion of top leaders are on the list. The question is, they're claiming that there's no footage. They're claiming that it was just the main guy was the one recording things just for his own personal use, apparently. The question is, who actually has access to that stuff? Because whoever has access to that basically has access to the entire decision-making apparatus of the U.S. government at that point, which is something concerning to me. Because obviously you have the risk of blackmail, you have the risk of outside influence being able to get a grip on the entire U.S. government, including the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, the whole thing at that point. So we'll never know the answer to that either, unfortunately. And I wish we could get the answer to that, but we'll never know the answer. There might be clues here and there about where that influence lies, because you might see the government making some very illogical decisions regarding a certain entity, if you know what I mean. But we'll never know for certain.
I just saw something funny. And this isn't political, folks, but I'm gonna have to state it for what it is. Someone said, "Well, I gotta go read it word for word, man. It's hilarious. The disconnect. Let's see. If the list was really like that, where everyone was on it, then the Dems would have released it. We know who's on it. It's a sea of blue." Okay, so how in the world do you explain that the Republicans are also not releasing the list either? I mean, that suggests that a lot of people from both sides are on the list. It has nothing to do with partisanship at this point, because considering that, just to put this out there clearly, the Democrats were in charge in the last administration, and they didn't release the list. Now the Republicans are in charge in the executive, which has the sole authority to release that. It's not up to the Congress. The Congress has no say in this. The executive could release that on their own. Why aren't they releasing it? If this would destroy their opponent as a political party, the Democrat Party, why wouldn't they release it? It makes no sense.
Because they're all policing each other. That's why. That indicates, that sort of leans that direction. There must be a lot of people from all sides of the aisle on that list, because the fact that it has not been released by one political party or the other indicates that so many people are on it that they are policing each other. They all have a a handshake or a mutual understanding that if one person releases it, then everybody's going down. So at that point, you have a situation where other people basically enforce each other's decision making and say, okay, we just won't release it as a whole. Like the leader class of the country simply will not release it, because if one person goes down, they all go down. So it becomes like a self-fulfilling situation amongst the whole thing. And then, but that's not really the main concern. The main concern is not the domestic situation. The main concern is what foreign actor has control over that information. That's the real concern, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting thing, but that once again, that's kind of to point out that all parties do the same thing. You're under a misillusion to think that on most things they would do anything different. And then hell, even when they get a majority, you know what's kind of funny about that is that when they actually do get a majority where they control the executive and they control the majority of Congress, you know what they do then? It's the funniest thing ever. Like, you know, it could be either party. Okay, let's make that big decision on, gun control, abortion, or whatever divisive topic has been the zeitgeist for the past 2 decades. Then they start to argue about the actual details of how much they should liberalize or constrict that specific thing within the party that's now the majority. And then they don't find a consensus and nothing's done. And so it's always interesting to me how people just fight endlessly for stuff that generally either doesn't have that much impact or there's not going to be a lot of change on or anything like that. It's a little bit interesting, but still, generally, the reason why you shouldn't be fighting over that is that there's no reason to fight. You just go to the ballot box and you vote people out who aren't doing the right thing. That's the basic answer. It doesn't matter whether Republicans or Democrats or what. But the truth is that a lot of people are too scared to do that, or they're too brainwashed to do that, because they sit there and go, well, the Democrats are the blessed heroes of the world, or the Republicans are, and I just can't vote against them. I got to vote straight ticket this next election without thinking, without even listening to anyone's points, or even thinking of whether this representative or president or senator that I'm voting for did the right thing for their last term or not. I'm just going to vote for them again because they're in my party. And that's the reason why there's so much of a dysfunction in the system, is because people keep doing that. Because we get taught, like to defeat lobbyists or to defeat special interest groups, it takes voters voting the proper way to actually defeat them. To vote for people who might not have a lot of funding for those television ads, to actually be attentive, to do their research, to do their reading. That's what actually would fix the system. But people keep on going, well, I saw that guy's name on TV. He had hundreds of millions of dollars put behind him to get those ads on television. And since I saw his name, and he's literally like every other guy, just because I saw his name, I'm going to vote for him, and I'm going to think he's different. Why the hell would anyone think that? That just doesn't make any sense. If you actually want a real representative of your interest, you actually have to wield your vote like a weapon of employment and unemployment. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're unemployed. And if they keep doing what you exactly want them to, and I mean, you practically hold these politicians' jobs hostage with your vote. If they are not doing exactly what you're doing, you don't vote for them, and they're out. They are not getting a check anymore. So that makes them more beholden to the voters at that point than any lobbyist or a special interest group, because it doesn't matter how much the lobbyists or the special interest groups are throwing into any kind of money for ads or any other sort of political advertising, because the voters are too smart to fall for it. They look right through it, and if they're not doing what they want them to, they go. So then that largely brings the power back to the voters instead of special interest groups, without even having to fight the special interest groups in the first place to deal with the stupidity of the average voter. That's just the truth of it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here is going to go to, also real quick thing as well. Believe it or not, I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm not privy to behind the scenes discussions or anything like that. So I'm just simply basing it on my speculation. But if there was a list out there, and there was a list containing very high profile government leadership on that list, that would be a national security issue at that point. I'm being serious about that. It would actually be a national security issue. And the U.S. government, under certain situations of national security, they have the ability to conduct certain defensive measures to ensure that threat is eliminated. I'm just going to leave it at that. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Wantan Quadruple 8, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Wantan, for that support. They said, is it a bird? Is it a plane? And sadly, I can't read the whole thing. It got political. He said LSA, and sorry, I had to do it, and LSA.
Thank you for support. That was an interesting one, though. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Destiny Edgington, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Destiny, as well, for that support. And she threw in a super sticker of the YouTube creature saying thank you. And we appreciate you, Destiny, as well. And we appreciate that very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Destiny, because it is folks like you who help this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Paul Walker, who puts in a 10. And he said Ukraine support is inarguably the best buck-for-buck investment in American hegemony. And what is hegemony but our power versus our rivals' powers? And look at what Ukraine's doing, in Israel, by the way.
I gotta thank you for the support, and I would definitely agree with you on that, Paul Walker. There's a great deal of value that we get out of supporting our allies and their fights against our greater enemies around the world. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wantan Quadruple 8 once again, who puts in a $10 donation. He said, let's see here. Sadly, Wantan, I can't read that one, sadly, but thank you very much for that $10 support, and we appreciate that very much again. I wish I could read it, but sadly, I'll have to pass on it. But our next one here goes to S. Barakat, who puts in a 10, and they said, what's your thoughts about lifting HTS from the terror group list, and does that cancel all the crimes they committed in the past?
I personally wasn't a big fan of that because they were conducting atrocities after they became the interim government recently. I wasn't really a big fan of that, but I understand the position it's coming from because we're trying to treat this new Syria like it's a legitimate Syria, considering that the Assad regime's gone. So I understand why, but for the atrocities and the crimes against humanity that the HTS have conducted, it's not really the most surefire lifting of the terrorist list sort of a thing I've ever seen, in my opinion. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in an 8. And thank you very much, Margaret, as well. She said, and not sure if this is a stupid question, and there's no stupid questions at all, Margaret.
No.
She said, why does Russia not take over Belarus as part of them, a gentle overthrow of the government?
That's not a stupid question at all. That's actually a great question because the Russians have made it clear that that's a part of their territorial ambition. It's generally so that way a whole bunch of other post-Soviet countries, like all of the Caucasus Mountain states and the Stand Series countries, don't panic and run away too quickly. That's generally the reason why. But once Russia gets everything to heal, they'll probably start to annex all those countries and bring them back under direct Russian control. But for now, they allow them to benevolently survive to make it look like the Russians are not that overtly aggressive. It's just that they're somewhat aggressive. That's kind of the approach they're going with, I would assume, right now. But with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Reckless by Design, who puts in a 5. They said, why are there so many military aircraft flying right now, and why are so many Poseidon in Florida?
Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that. I haven't been following a lot of air activities around the state of Florida at the moment, so I wouldn't really be able to give you a good answer on that, just because I haven't been paying attention to that in particular. But a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, also, I saw someone making a shout out for a new political party. Listen, if you think that a foreign South African running an American political party as one of the richest people on the planet is actually going to make any kind of a difference, you're sorely mistaken. There is not a chance in hell that that party, if they ever even stood a chance at winning anything, would ever make a difference. I mean, hell, have y'all seen what that guy has done? Like, I'm not saying that I'm anti-Elon, but the guy is just like anyone else in the game right now up there in the political system. He went and put in money into the Hyperloop system in California just so that way they would screw over the California high-speed rail project, so that way people would keep buying cars and they buy Teslas. I mean, that tells you right there, that's not really exactly the kind of honest Joe that you would want in politics, per se. You know, it's not necessarily.
It sounds like politics.
Huh?
This sounds like politics.
It's not necessarily politics, but to act like this is a diamond in the rough sort of a group, you know, it's like it's the same as the other two, treating them all equally. There's a decent amount of suspect matter on all of them at the moment with those sorts of deals. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 5. He said the U.S. and Philippines have a mutual defense treaty, and we've been allies for 100 years, and it's a real crap move to ignore them.
It kind of is. We are actually building bases in the Philippines at the moment in Luzon Island, but it is a little bit of a crap move to act like the Chinese Coast Guard beating up Filipino fishermen is just something, you know, it's a meh deal. But if you're also talking about the many Houthis, at the same time, we can't be everywhere doing everything for them, and still there would have to be a Filipino representative representing those Filipino citizens, because they're not citizens of the United States. Department of State can't represent their interests. They're not Americans. They're Filipinos. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 5. He said, Lavi, history rhymes like the UK Rolls-Royce Nen jet engine sold to the Soviets, and it's showing up copied and put into the MiG-15.
Yeah, that's actually a good one as well. The Rolls-Royce company actually did sell one of their earlier jet engines to the Soviets, and they ended up putting them in all of the MiG-15s, which we would end up going up against for the next several years from that point. So not really a great move by then. Honestly, that was something that the United States had a good grounds to be displeased with the British about, is the Rolls-Royce company being allowed to sell a modern jet engine design to the Soviets. Like, I don't know why in the world that ever went through. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5. He said, take a live chat question. And we shall, CK Bold. And thank you very much for that super chat, as always. And we do appreciate that. And CK, this one goes to Jaded, who said, do you think that tech companies in Taiwan should move out? And thank you for the great coverage.
I would say tech companies in Taiwan should move out to the United States, but at the same time, I don't think that we should act like Taiwan's only value is TSMC. So that's what my general answer would be. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running and sponsoring a live chat, CK Bold. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jack Ray. Once again, he puts in a 5. He said, we could protect the United States from our allies. Presidential gaffe practice. Enforcer for president. LOC.
And thank you for your vote for President of the United States in 2040. And Matthew will be on the ticket as Vice President of the United States in 2040. We'll run the thing. But beyond that, I got to say, we can protect the United States from our allies. Yeah, you know, that was a gaffe of a sort. That was a Bushism, I will admit. But I do thank you for supporting helping this channel to keep running. With that, we are on to the next one.
We'll release the list. But anyways, oh Lord, have mercy. I think that's going to be, I think that's going to fade from memory before long for a lot of people. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Siri, who puts in a 5. And they said, great job, Enforcer Bros. Vexology tidbit. 8 countries have weapons in their flags, and only one has a semi-automatic. XO from Oslo.
And I think the one that has the semi-automatic is Angola. No, is it? They have a machete. Which one is the one? Hold up, folks. I gotta think here for a second. Let's see. Is it Namibia? It's one of these countries here on the west coast of Africa. Namibia. No. Oh my goodness. Am I forgetting it? Is it Zambia? It can't be. It's down here in this area somewhere. No, it's not Zambia. Is it Botswana? Hold up. I gotta keep... Botswana? No. Dang it! I'm gonna have to go look. Let me take this off screen. Countries with guns in their flags. Let me go get this list. Let me go and get this list. So, yeah. It actually. Oh my goodness, I was just off by a little bit. It's actually on the west coast of Africa. It's Mozambique that has the AK on their flag. Let me go show that to y'all. Mozambique. Here we go. They have a full AK on their flag. Oh, is there an issue? Can anyone hear me? Testing.
Oh, are you asking me a question?
I thought you were going to react to be like, oh my god. I was going to be like, yeah. I was like, am I even connected?
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Yeah, Mozambique actually has an AK. Actually, that's automatic technically. But still pretty cool. But there actually was a list of countries with guns in their flag. There was Guatemala, Haiti, Afghanistan. Well, the historical flag of Afghanistan, Bolivia. Let's see here. Want to find. Edmonton, Canada has a gun. West Virginia, several U.S. states have guns in their flags. Very American of us. But let's see here. A lot of Ukrainian and Russian oblast flags actually have guns within them. But very interesting, nevertheless. And I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, some people were saying, VP's a placeholder, Matt. Why would you want that? Why wouldn't you want to be like Secretary of State or something different? I mean, here's the thing, folks. Like, people underestimate how much power the VP's got. They obviously don't get to override the president. That's number one, or at least they're not supposed to. But, there's been times when the vice president's kind of tested the boundaries a little bit, Dick Cheney. But, it happens from time to time. But the VP actually gets their own, like, set of advisors. They also have a pretty large say in foreign policy, believe it or not, as well. Not with the current administration. That's not the way it works. But in past administrations, it has worked like that from time to time. So I get the fact that some people think the VP is just like sitting there waiting for the president to croak, and then they step up and they take over. That is a primary function, but it's not the only function of the VP. So, also, Ms. Disa said the VP is the president of the Senate as tiebreaker. That's true as well. That's very important as well. But also, the VP has to kind of do what the party tells them to do. They can't just go in there and be like, I'm going to unilaterally say, I'm going to vote against whatever the president wants, because they might find themselves in a bad political position at that point. But, I get what people were saying. Honestly, Secretary of State would be a cool position. Secretary of Defense would be a good one as well. But you really, those positions, they need like competent people in those positions. The VP doesn't necessarily have to be super competent. You'd hope they're competent. So if the president croaks, you got somebody to replace them that is has a good head on their shoulders. But you really need a good Secretary of Defense and also Secretary of State. If those are messed up, things go very bad very quickly, because then you have no direction. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Michael Mack, who puts in a 5. And Michael said, wow, I just heard the first ignorant statement here on this channel. Whoa, Michael, whoa. He said, if we are giving billions of dollars to country, we should at least give a shit. For example, the Taliban and ISIS. We didn't give money to them.
How does the Taliban and the ISIS even tie into that statement? We didn't give either of them money.
We've never given money to them.
We gave money to the Mujahideen, but the Mujahideen was totally different than the Taliban. The Taliban was created after the Soviet-Afghan war. So I'd have to say, Michael, that was really like an ignorant retort, and a really arrogant one at that, to literally try and suggest that the U.S. gave money to the Taliban and to ISIS, which we never did. Like, I don't even really know how to react to that or answer your question. And also, pretty rude sort of an approach right there. I personally got to say that on air, I'm fairly lenient, but off air, I don't really take a lot of shit. And if that was said off air, I would have that would have been a gloves off sort of an approach right there.
Take it easy, man.
I don't know where people come off thinking that they can be rude, though, because it's like, if you disagree, you disagree. But to get that up front and confrontational about something that you clearly don't even know a damn thing about, saying that we gave money to the Taliban and ISIS, you probably ought to be a lot more calm about your approach. That way it really doesn't look like you're stupid when you say something that dumb. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Siri, who puts in the 5. And Siri said, I've been here since day 57. And one reason is I've seen the ability to learn plus evolve on the issues. And also, it's 25. Isolationism is silly and impossible. An XO from Oslo.
Yeah, it's impossible. I don't know why a lot of people always want to be trying isolationist. I don't know why. Like, that's always a big push. That's a big push, actually, in a lot of countries. It's like, it never fixes anything. It makes things tough. But beyond that, I do thank you for support, and I thank you for sticking around, because we do adapt and evolve. But generally, on pro-American and Western interests, we always stay steadfast on making sure that we look out for the interests of folks like us here in America and folks like you over in Norway combined. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts it a 5. He said, Machiavelli seems to be misunderstood because the principles he stated translate to modern politics and are applicable to every era. LSA all the way. Now, Machiavelli was a bit dark when it comes to the way he operated, but it was it's kind of like the truth of the way geopolitical systems operate. But the problem is, like, I think the reason why Machiavelli's gotten such a bad rap is because he's used to describe people with narcissistic personality disorder these days, and people that are very self-centered. But I think they're sort of like taking what that book was about and sort of like putting it onto psychology a little bit. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a crossover. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say, I would agree for the large part. I've read The Prince before. It's a very interesting read, because pretty much Machiavelli, which I believe is how the name is pronounced. I never know how to pronounce his name, but beyond that, I think that's correct. Matthew didn't say anything, so I think that's correct. But
Yeah, that's right.
Machiavelli's The Prince pretty much just summarized that whatever the ends you're wanting to achieve, it justifies the means, whatever the means are. That's pretty much the whole rundown of The Prince in summary. But that is also very analogous to how narcissists operate. Is that the ends justify whatever means are necessary. That's pretty much how they work as well. That's why a lot of people take Machiavellian ideas and say, "Oh, this guy is like Machiavellian." Is because in his personal life he has that kind of a mindset, which on a personal level you're never supposed to have that mindset. We've had some very not to get too detailed in it, very traumatic dealings with someone like that. Generally leave that in the past, but outside of that, in terms of foreign policy or statescraft, this is kind of a bit of messed up thing to say, but it's actually true. That kind of a mindset is actually justifiable and is in fact encouraged, because as far as a country is going, your country, as far as the benefits of your nation and your citizenry, the ends do justify whatever means are necessary most of the time, save ones that are crimes against humanity or war crimes or anything along those lines. Of course, that's a line you don't cross. But beyond that, beyond those parameters, whatever means you have to take justify, whatever ends you are needing justify the means. That's what a lot of people don't get about foreign policy and diplomacy, is that you're certainly not supposed to operate on that level in your personal life, but on a national foreign policy level, you're not dealing with individuals, you're dealing with states. And so you're trying to secure the best interest for your nation, even at especially the disadvantage of your enemies, and usually for the mutual compensation or mutual benefit of your allies, at least to some level. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I don't know what it is with people like, no, Machiavelli. Like, I don't know what it is with that, but that's generally how it works. But with that, I hope that does address
Machiavelli really just he basically laid out I guess you could say the chessboard for the game. I don't think Machiavelli was saying necessarily to be evil. I don't think that's what he was saying, but he was basically laying out the way it works, and it's always worked like that. Like, as old as that was, the Prince, it was true then, and it's still true now. If you're somebody that wants to be a politician, or you want to be somebody that's involved in geopolitics and things like that, it functions like that, whether or not you want to go along with it or not. You can try to get in there and try to go against the grain, against status quo, and you're going to get run over. That's just the way it works. So, that's why some people don't want to get involved in it, because they're like, I don't want to, get in an environment like that, because I'll have to adapt to it, which means you might end up falling into those principles that Machiavelli was talking about in the book. So, that's why some people don't want in it, and I can totally understand that. But anyways, jumping to our next one here, this one goes to Kyle Padell. He puts in two $5 donations, and he said, random, but did you guys see the Black Sabbath final concert? And you mentioned music earlier.
I do thank you for support, Kyle Padell. I personally didn't. I don't usually watch a lot of stuff like that, like really music of any type. Like, I just kind of listen to music in my car, and it's really, really obscure stuff. Like, mostly patriotic and governmental music from other countries while I'm trying to research them, so that way I can kind of understand through their music or something, how their nation operates. But I personally didn't see it, unfortunately, Kyle, so I'd have to say no. But I do thank you for support, and we're on to the next one.
And Kyle's second one here said, put Hot Dog Man on the speaker. LSA, best in the news.
Aw, man, he's fallen off. Aw, man. But beyond that, I do thank you for support. And there you go. Hot Dog Man was on the speaker for just a second, Kyle. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The weird thing, Enforcer, I was pulling up the Machiavellian principles again just to get a gist of exactly what was said. Because I remember vaguely what they are, but I don't remember all of them. It's weird when you read this that some people's actual entire personality and persona is based on these principles. And Machiavelli was talking about the way politics works and things like that. Generally speaking, that's what he was mainly talking about. He was talking about leadership, relationships, things like that. In a more larger sense, but using religion as a tool, trust as a liability, divide and rule, control the narrative, avoid being hated, but also at the same time put your foot down and stomp on people. Basically, use cruelty wisely and sparingly. It's things like that, that are just really honestly
Sounds
terrible.
like someone we know.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, it sounds somewhat vaguely familiar, unfortunately.
Well, not
But
vaguely.
moving into
It's
our,
that's dead
oh,
on.
yeah,
Like we're not going to get more into it here, but that's dead on the nail right there.
uh,
There's like that's literally
yeah.
verbatim exactly what it was like, except for the cruelty wasn't used sparingly; it was used daily. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. And they said, LSA hit the like button. That's an order.
And hit the like button, folks. That is in order. We got up to 4,400 likes tonight, which is huge. And if y'all do want to hit the like button a little bit extra, we'd be more than happy to see it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. A big thanks to you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Z, who puts in a 5. They said, I'm just curious at what your guys' day jobs are. So during the day, I'm a professional LCD screen watcher, quality inspector of LCD screens. Actually, it's a very interesting job. It's not a lot of it's actually a lot of repetition. You look at the screen like it's a 27-inch screen or whatever. Like it's LCD, very nice, 4K, and you make sure the screen's working properly by looking at Twitter all day long. Now, that's what I do in the day job. But Enforcer, what say you?
My day job is a bait salesman, so I go outside with a little like a grinding machine, and I vibrate it on the ground, and the worms come up to the surface. I put them in a can, and I go sit down by a lake, and I sell them to people who are fishing. I'm just kidding, by the way. This is our day job. Like this is our day job.
Also,
right
someone,
here.
wait a minute, somebody said OPSEC. I'm joking, by the way. I'm not an LCD screen inspector. I'm making a joke for staring at the screen all day. That's all. Like, I'm not actually an LCD screen inspector.
Yeah, and I'm not a bait salesman, a bait and tackle salesman either. This is our day job here. We do this all day, every day. So I hope that addresses that well. Funnily enough, I actually was a place the other day doing some business, well, not really business stuff. It was more so personal stuff, food and everything. And I was talking to this fella, and he was the owner of the store that I was in. And the guy actually said, "Wow, you've got like a voice for radio, man. Like, have you ever looked into that?" I was like, "Well, funnily enough." And I was like, "Well, I'm a YouTuber." And he was like, "Really?" He was like, "Wow, that's interesting." I was like, "Yeah, I'm a YouTuber with my brother. Like we run a show together, all that sort of stuff." But the guy was saying that we should get into audiobooks because we have a voice for audiobooks. I was like, that is really funny, actually. Because if y'all don't know as well, I talk in a much more monotone voice than I do on air, and so it is a lot. It's a lot deeper to an extent. I don't really do that a lot on air though, because it's really hard to fluctuate my voice when I talk normally. It's very monotone and flat. So on air, I go up an octave, like a whole octave, and so that way I can actually fluctuate my voice up and down. But anyways, with that, I hope that addressed that well. I hope that was an interesting story for y'all. But this is our day job. We do this all day and night. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Someone said, read Tom Clancy. But maybe we could one day. That would be quite interesting. Now, I can imagine, though, that considering the fact that we've gotten a little bit of a following here on our main channel here on The Enforcer, and it's our only channel, by the way. Someone's going to say, the main channel, what's the second channel? We don't have a second channel yet. But if we put out like a thing for like doing voiceovers or something or doing audiobooks, I can only imagine the crazy, like wild requests we'd be getting probably at that point. It'd probably be off the wall crazy stuff. So we probably could never do that.
I am not
but
reading the
anyways,
Communist
jumping
Manifesto. Like I'm not
or
reading
reading something crazy off.
Yeah.
So one or the other. Yeah, honestly,
none of
that
those,
could be tough.
Like for real, man. Like but anyways, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Z, who puts in a 10. Also, someone said, yet, ... Yes, that was intentional. But Z puts in a 10 once again. They said, LSA, appreciate you, bros, and let's go.
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army, Z, and let's go, Masu! Come here, my boy. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5. And he said, pizza fund.
Hey, pizza. We actually got a pizza today. And so I thank you massively for the support. I hope that has addressed that well, Kyle. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Michael Mack, who puts in a 2. He said, you do rock. None of us are perfect.
And thank you for the support, Michael. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a $2 super chat from Bruce Lee. He said, no, not the bees, the bees, the bees.
Ah, that's from The Wicker Man. That was a movie that, let's see, what was his name? Nicolas Cage was in. But I do thank you for the support. And not the base, the base! But anyways, with that, I thank you for the support. That was our last super chat, by the way, of the segment. And so it's time for us to move on into the Morse code decoders and then the last 3 questions of the night. And then we're rounding this thing on out.
All right, so it's that time of the night. So jumping right into our Morse code decoders of the stream, we have Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, and her royal fluffiness. They said the Morse code decipher says for the night, Russia, Houthis, China, and Iran are playing pretty crazy. What a shame for them. LTLC.
And that's the sound of money. That was the Morse code message. That was dead on the nail. Y'all got that correct. I've got to congratulate y'all greatly once again for getting that correct, because y'all have gotten that correct time and time again, multiple days here on this on the stream for years, as a matter of fact, and we greatly congratulate y'all for that. So with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to our 3 live chat questions of the live chat segment. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to AF Kaplan. He said, has there been any official statement from NATO regarding the crash drone incident in Lithuania? Now, unfortunately, I want to answer that one real quick. There has been no statement from NATO. And guess what? The Lithuanian media themselves has failed to report on the matter hardly at all. I was speaking, or at least hearing from some Lithuanian viewers today. They were telling me in the comments, they were telling me on Twitter, they were saying, how come I live in Lithuania and I've heard nothing about this at all, and you're the only place I'm hearing about this outside of my country? And also, they also saw the reports on other mainstream channels about it later on in the day after we put our report out. So I guess Lithuania is trying to not cause panic in their country, I guess, and maybe that's part of it, or they just want to cover it up so that way they don't have to address it. That's probably the more likely answer, is that one right there. But no NATO statement, no Lithuanian statement, nothing. It's kind of crazy. But Enforcer, what say you?
There's been no NATO statement, at least from what we've heard of so far. So with that, I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, it is time for us to get on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Joey Blaze, who said, do you think the collective West is doing enough to support and sponsor regime change in Iran, which feels like the best solution to the Iran nuclear problem?
I don't think so, and I think that we should be doing more. I think that, honestly, that's the only real answer that we have to the end of the nuclear weapons program, is to get rid of the regime which keeps spurring and starting and running that nuclear weapons program. So I would say that we're not doing enough. We need to be doing a lot more, and I'm a little bit disappointed with our approach to the situation so far. It's a lackluster sort of an approach. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Alarm Goose, who said, it's clear that we're going to likely be in an actual war very soon with someone. And the question is, will it be anything like the first 2 world wars, because tech is so different now?
It is going to be similar in some approaches, completely different in others. I'll be honest with you, war at this point in this modern day and age is totally different than what it's ever really looked like. Even as far as the trench warfare, it's very different than what it used to be. So I would say that it will look similar, at least in its general premise, like some snapshots of the conflict. You know, like the trenches, if there are any, in some battlefields, they'll look really similar. It's just that the equipment and really just the equipment will have changed a little bit, but in other aspects, it's entirely different. So that would be my answer. It's going to be similar in some ways, very different in others. But with that, I hope that does answer your question incredibly well, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream, folks. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. We had a peak viewership here tonight of 16.3 thousand people. Quite a massive number. And we've also been able to see that 156,000 people have joined us before the stream ended. We're entirely honored and appreciative to know that each and every one of y'all have enjoyed our stream tonight, and we do hope that y'all like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world, and if there are any major breaking news developments, we'll be making sure to cover those. Any breaking, well, not a breaking news stream, but a short war video that I'll be making tomorrow. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow. And thank you all for joining us once again tonight, to all 160,000 plus people that were here by the end of the stream. And we appreciate every single one of you for being here like usual. And be sure to join the Enforcer tomorrow midday for that short war video. And have a very strong feeling, a very, very strong feeling that he will have good news tomorrow to show you on that video. But also, we will see you tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern as well for the next Nightly War News stream. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest and good night.
Go